And welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 255. And it is, Wednesday, January 25th. I can't believe January is almost over. I know it's Wednesday. I just didn't know it's 25th. almost
the last Wednesday of the month.
February. Jeez. Feels like winter again here in Columbus, Ohio. So we're dealing with that. People are, people just blah all around. You know what I mean? Like
the weather's gray and so are the people.
Yeah, for real. It's annoying. Not the weather, more the people. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's Nate and I this week. No special guest. I'm hoping to have some participation from the audience here. So we'll see how that goes. If I get even notified that we have a show going, hey, there it is. Here we are. One person watching.
Me. Oh, wait, no, there's two.
All right. So hopefully we get some more people. I'm going to share this in a moment here. Hopefully you guys get notified. I know that's been a little bit wonky lately, but hope to have some, like I said, good participation from the crowd. Before we get started, I want to do a little bit of thank yous to you guys that support the show on patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. There's 3 different tiers you guys can contribute to the show. $5, $10, and $25 tier. So appreciate the continued support from everyone. And also for the people that have thrown some contributions to the show. We had to get a new camera lately. It's just stuff for maintenance and upkeep of the show. But Venmo at Bourbon and BS if you guys want to do a particular bottle or a particular gift to the show, whatever. If you guys want to join us on the show, that'd be great as well. We're always looking for topics. We're looking for guests. We're looking for all that good stuff. If you want to hook us up with a person like a distillery or cigar vendor that you think we should talk to, always appreciate that as well.
Yeah, it's nice to have an eclectic variety of people to have on the show in the middle chair.
Absolutely. But I do enjoy these shows as well, where it's just Nate and myself and the audience. So we appreciate that. It's a little cold. No live audience members at the moment. You never know. Last week we had a couple people pop in. Kind of tends to happen when you leave your garage door and front door open while you're doing the show.
Which is why we don't publicize the address.
Oh, shit. Tinderbox at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for the support. We've got this week's cigar is the Blanco Above and Beyond. So we appreciate that. They have a good line of the Blanco cigars at the Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. So check them out there. Or obviously you can check them out at a local brick and mortar if you have something near you, and enjoy those cigars. We'll learn a little bit more about that and hope to have David Blanco on the show coming up. Also want to thank Altadis USA, Josh Bentley, who set everything up. We appreciate his hard work getting us sponsored. And it's been a wonderful ride with Altadis USA, and hope to continue that relationship. BS Cigar Company, gold and silver are available. The gold is made by Plasencia. The silver is made by Espinosa. They are also available at our sponsor, Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, or you can obviously have them shipped to you as well. And I have a shirt on underneath. It's cold. Nate's got the BS Bourbon and BS hoodie on.
And a heated jacket
underneath. I got a sweater, and I've got the pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. Blue, I think it was just a prototype. We didn't do blue, did we?
No, we didn't do blue.
So it's the prototype. I've got it. The only one custom. No big deal. But that I've
got the OG gray on underneath.
Nice.
With the logo on the back.
Nice. You can find those at buyjack.com/bourbon and BS. Tonight we are drinking something Nate brought with him. It's the Bernheim Original Wheat Whiskey.
Yes.
We got a nice sip on that before, just as cheers.
Not a
cheers
wheated.
To you guys.
It's not a bourbon. It's not a wheated bourbon. It is a wheat whiskey.
Yes.
So something a little bit different.
Wheat whiskey.
Why are you putting so much emphasis on the H?
I don't know. Just seems like what you do. I'm going to take a couple more sips of that. Then I'm going to light up the Above and Beyond, which we can talk about. You want to start with the whiskey? And while you do that, I'm going to light up after I actually share the show here on a couple of our pages, including the Bourbon and BS community page, which 1,700 members strong, which I appreciate the support there. It's a great way to kind of join the community and the show and take it beyond the BS.
Yeah, even though I had my lighter in the house all week, it needs to warm up a little bit.
I feel you. We got enough lighters here.
Yeah, so Bernheim Original. this is a Heaven Hill product. The distillery this is coming out of was originally founded in 1992 by United Distillers, which eventually became Diageo.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sold it to Heaven Hill, who renamed it in 99 as the Heaven Hill Bernheim Distillery. And this distillery then became their main production site, because in 96 they had the fire at their distillery. So
Okay.
burnt the distillery plus 90,000 barrels of whiskey.
90,000
barrels.
Jesus
So
Christ.
if you're on the low end, like if you figure just say 200
Sure.
bottles per, I mean, that's a shit ton of bottles. That's
a lot of bottles. It's a lot of whiskey.
It's a lot of whiskey. But yeah, so this product actually came out in 2005, so it's actually been around for a while. But I think the first time I ever saw it was a month ago.
Okay.
I was at a liquor store I don't normally go to previously, and I saw this, and I was like, what the hell is this? Never seen this, and it's a good price point. It's a $30 bottle in the state of Ohio.
30?
$29.99.
$29.99.
Yeah. It's a 7-year wheat whiskey. Now, being a wheat whiskey instead of a bourbon, it does not have to be made in the United States like bourbon does.
Sure.
This is a 7-year product. It does say small batch. That there's no definition as to what that is for them.
Mm-hmm.
90 proof. So in order to be a wheat whiskey, just like with bourbon, just flipping the ingredient, it has to be at least 51% wheat.
Okay.
And that's exactly what this is. Because we've had
51%.
51%. Because we've had some, obviously ryes, you can be a 51% rye, you can be a 95% rye, whatever you want, as long as it's above that 51. But like Woodford, for example, when they came out with their rye, it's a 53% rye. When they came out with their malt whiskey, it was a 51% malt. So like when we had that, I think that was year 1 of the podcast, I brought it.
Oh, wow.
And it has that blue label underneath it. And like Jake thought it was going to be like a scotch because it's malt.
Yeah.
And then we'll find out, oh no, it's only 51% malt. So it tasted like a whiskey, but it just had a little bit more of that nuttiness that you would get from the malt grain. So this one is a 51% wheat, 37% corn, and then 12% malted barley.
Okay.
So even having that 37% corn, that's not far off from what it takes to be a bourbon. So you're still going to get some of that corn sweetness to it. It's just that wheat puts a much different flavor on the whiskey than the sweetness from the corn, because wheat is not as sweet as corn. Try saying that a bunch of times fast.
You barely get it once.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It does say on the label, if you notice, it does say Kentucky Straight wheat whiskey. So in order for it to have that straight on there, it has to be aged at least 2 years in an oak barrel, new oak barrel, just like with bourbon. And it has to be from one state. So when it says Kentucky Straight, that means the juice that's going into it is only from the state of Kentucky.
Okay. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Thank you for all that information. That's great.
I try.
I was sharing during a lot of it, so
I know.
I probably don't know most of it. I'll probably ask questions as usual.
That's fine.
Yeah, it happens.
It does. But no, like the nose at least does remind me of some bourbons, but definitely on the lighter side. I mean, if you put up a 7-year bourbon next to this, my guess is that 7-year bourbon would probably have a darker shade of color to it. It doesn't seem like the wheat whiskeys get as rich and deep a color as some of the bourbons will.
Because of the corn?
That's what my guess is.
Yeah.
That
just a different mash bill.
Yeah. But no, it still has like some of those, like it still comes across light on the nose and on the palate, I think. Like it's got a little bit of sweetness and spice on the nose. on the palate, I get quite a bit of oak, little bit of spice on the back of it, but it almost has like this buttery texture to it.
Buttery. You said oak. I almost feel like it's definitely the lighter characteristics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had it in a while, but I mean, it's one of those things. I'm not saying it tastes like this, but it's a little bit more of a different type of a wood to me, less oak. It's almost like,
Okay.
what is it? Long Branch by by Eddie Russell, by Wild Turkey.
Yeah.
That one, with the mesquite process they did. This almost has a little bit more of those types of flavors. Like it's smoked a little bit with like mesquite type of like a smoker, like a not cedar, but it's just not as oaky to me. It's a different woodiness to it. And maybe that's just the other flavors going along with the wood.
It's got a little sharpness to it.
It
doesn't have
not
those
harsh or bitey.
No, but it does. It definitely does not have those bold, deep, rich, like caramel or butterscotch notes that you might get from a bourbon. I don't think it has like any of the cherry that you might get from some of them or chocolate. It's just kind of light, almost a little bit more of like a honey sweetness, something a little bit softer on the palate. And then it's got the spice is more on the back end, like on the finish. Kind of stays on your tongue a little bit.
Yeah, but it's not a lot, I don't think.
No, it's not a bold flavor on the finish. It's kind of light all the way through. Nose, palate, finish, but it kind of hangs around a little bit on the finish.
It does, and it does have a little bit of that creaminess, like a little bit of the like the butterscotch to it, I think, a little vanilla butterscotch to it.
Okay.
I don't know if you get any of that.
Well, I mean, not really. I don't get that level of sweetness to it.
Not the sweetness. Not like sweet.
No.
Not like, but yeah, more of like a vanilla.
That could be. Yeah. I'll give you that.
You'll give me that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Interesting
what
story.
What can I say? I'm generous.
Yeah, okay. You are. The side of this does say, just so I didn't see this when you first brought the bottle in, that it has some description. I'm looking at the back of it, though, and it doesn't really have much on there. I was wondering if it says Heaven Hill anywhere on there. And it really doesn't. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just says Bardstown.
Yeah, well, yeah. It
Bardstown, Kentucky, not Bardstown.
Distilled and bottled by Bernheim Distillery. So they are going full-blown with that, staying away from the Heaven Hill part of it. But, yeah.
It's probably by design, but why do you think it is that they would not put that it's a Heaven Hill product?
I think you can go a couple different ways with it, just to distinguish yourself in a sense that I don't know how much Heaven Hill is known for wheated whiskeys. This one's saying it uses a soft winter wheat as the main grain in its recipe, 7 years, like you mentioned. I don't know. Maybe it's just trying to distinguish itself from Heaven Hill and the.
If you didn't know that Bernheim Distillery was owned by Heaven Hill, and you weren't someone who was going to look it up and try and get all the information before you bought it, yeah, you probably would not know. Unless you were one of the whiskey nerds or looked it up, you probably wouldn't know that this was a Heaven Hill product.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to be a whiskey nerd anymore to look stuff up. I think so many people are trying to, just like the cigar world, they do a Google search, they read a review, should I buy it?
Yeah.
Because there's so much. Or they grab it, someone gives them a gift of this bottle of the Bernheim Original Wheat Whiskey. And it does stand out with the fact that it says 7-year aged small batch on there as well. So they do church it up a little bit, even though it may be true. But I mean, it does look like it could be a more pricey bottle. It could, again, 7 years, again, small batch thrown on there. It does look like that. But if you hadn't heard of it, it does, with a little quick Google search and a little bit of reading, you find out that there is a lot of history behind it. And, the fact that they are with Heaven Hill, the fact that they were, You said they were bought and sold a couple times, correct?
So the distillery was originally started by the company that would become Diageo.
Okay, it wasn't sold to Diageo. I got you.
And then Diageo sold it to Heaven Hill.
Okay.
Who named it the Heaven Hill Bernheim Distillery.
Okay.
And that was in 99. And then this came out 6 years later in 2005. And according to Heaven Hill, it was the first new whiskey type since Prohibition.
Got it. First whiskey type?
Well, because you had bourbon, you had rye, you had
Wheat
Scotch,
whiskey.
but wheated, not a wheated bourbon, a wheat whiskey.
Interesting.
Jonathan said he knocked his cigar off his ashtray and stepped on it, and he blames me. You're in Texas. What the hell did I do?
Seems right.
Oh,
seems right.
All right.
I mean, he's usually the one that has the Team Nate shirt on, if you remember.
Ah, that's true.
Yeah. So how the tables have turned.
The turns have tabled.
Yeah. So I like this. It does have some good flavors to it. It is a bit lighter, even though it's coming in at, what was it, 100?
90 proof.
90 proof. So 90 proof. I mean, it does drink a little bit lighter, especially some of the stuff that we drink on this show. But it does have some nice flavor to it. It is a bit unique, I'd say, from what we've featured on this show before. So,
and I think that sweetness is actually
building.
I think they're starting to get a little bit more sweetness, either as we're getting into the bottle or because we've got the cigar going.
I think because of the cigar.
It could be because of the cigar. What are we smoking?
So this is the Blanco Above and Beyond. Kind of unique thing. I want to get David Blanco on the show, like I mentioned. Now, just for those that are fans of the show that are also fans of Tinderbox or the Smoking 10 event, just a quick announcement. Tomorrow, you will be finding some more details on the Smoking 10 event, which is the 10th annual Smoking 10 event.
Can you still say annual since we took 2 years off because of COVID?
Yeah, because it wasn't because of COVID. Let's not get down that fucking rabbit hole. 10th annual. All right. Just because they shut us down doesn't mean that we need to play into that game anymore. All right. So anyways, the 10th annual Smoking 10 event. Not this cigar, but David Blanco will be there as one of the special guests.
Oh, awesome.
So we're going to have Blanco Cigars featured there as one of the multiple vendors that we will have at the Smoking 10 event, 10th annual. Thank you very much. Smoking 10 event. So he'll be there. This one, the Above and Beyond, I'm going to bring up some notes on this just because it is kind of a cool story. And I don't want to
leave anything out.
I don't. You'll look at the band. Well, first of all, the packaging on this, and I'm not going to talk about the box as much just because we don't have one, but I'm kind of, I don't know, you probably won't be able to see it. Put it back on there. They all come in a torpedo shape, right? Box press torpedo. This is the Heroes. This is supposed to be the first of a 4-part series. This is the Heroes line, and this is the Classic, which is the size. This is the Classic. They have the Unwilling, the Willing, and there's one other that I'm not. There it is, the Epic. Okay, so kind of again, it's something that he has put out to pay tribute to the first responders.
Okay,
so that's the Above and Beyond. On there, you'll see a flag, kind of the American flag there, but in more or less black and white, vertical. And then you see kind of like more of the red, white, and blue theme on there, along with the little. It's got the little, I call it like a little hat. It's the
dunce cap.
It's
almost
not a dunce cap. It's just it's a cone on the top of it with the blue background and the white stars. Again, the American flag theme to it. And this one comes in. I'll give a little bit more information, but it comes in 21 count boxes as a tribute to the
21 gun salute.
Bingo.
Well, I also noticed like his name Blanco on the side. First 2 letters are red.
Yep.
Next 2 letters are blue. Next 2 letters are gold, and I'm guessing that's because white wouldn't really pop as much on on the label.
We also look. I think it's actually towards the military. So flip the band around to the back.
Oh, gold star.
The gold star. Yeah. So you have the red, and you have the fire department. The blue is the police, and then the gold star for the military. So that is kind of where we're at with that one. it like I said, they all come in the box press. They all have that torpedo so that it does have that little cap on there. Packaging's cool. I think it's unique. The band's pretty badass. You have even BlancoCigars.com on there, so he gives you just right there on the side. It's not that obvious, I mean, you can see it clearly, but it's not like this real big BlancoCigars.com. I think it's more of a subtle kind of a line there on there. But this one, you said you smoked this before, and it was
this when
I'm interested to hear what you have to say. We talked before the show, and Nate smoked one of these before.
I've smoked two.
Okay,
I have smoked two of these before. They were both different sizes.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the first time I smoked it, it actually reminded me a little bit of a Macanudo, the Macanudo Cafe, like the original soft green band, the white, like the Hyde Park, Hampton Court, Portofino, like kind of reminded me of
ultimate cigar.
Do what?
Self-proclaimed ultimate cigar.
Well, I mean,
they do.
That is Macanudo's best-selling cigar. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if it reminds me of that, like, well, that's a good thing for Blanco Cigars because it, at least on my palate, it's similar to one of the better-selling cigars on the market.
That's interesting. What about the retrohale?
I haven't done it yet.
Try it. Do me a favor, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about this.
A lot more to it than a Macanudo.
There we have it. There we have it. So this is so the Blanco family. So David Blanco, there's a little bit of story here, and like I said, I hope to have him on the show here at some point to give his background and how he got into it. But the Blancos, I believe, are like cousins of the Plasencia family, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got family ties to the Plasencia family. They get, I believe, all of their cigars, maybe one or two that aren't, but all of them coming out of Plasencia, including this one. This is coming out of the Plasencia factory in Nicaragua. This is a Nicaraguan Habano Rosado wrapper.
Really? Rosado? All right.
And binders from Honduras, and then the fillers from Honduras and Nicaragua.
Because everyone that comes into the shop looks at that cigar and goes, oh, it's Connecticut.
It is a lighter shade, but if you put that up against the true Connecticut, it definitely is a darker brown, in my opinion.
A little bit darker than the second cigar, the Reserve Real from Romeo Julieta.
Which is an Ecuadorian Connecticut.
Yeah, so comparing it to that, I can actually see a little bit more of that red hue that I normally get from that Rosado or even a Sumatra wrapper. A little bit of that redness in the hue of the wrapper. I think on the shelves of the Tinderbox, this is right next to some pretty dark cigars. So that could be one of the reasons why it looks lighter than it actually is.
It is. I would agree with you there. But I do get a little bit more like the saltiness and then also a little bit of kind of like spices through the retrohale. But it definitely has a lighter, little bit of saltiness on the palate for me. Lighter notes of wood, like more of cedar.
I was gonna say, definitely
light cedar.
Definitely some woody notes to it. And
I won't give all the details, but just a summary of David Blanco, so that when he does come on the show, there's a little bit more to the story. But he did not only serve the U.S. military, he also, for a short time, was a police officer, and also was for a short time. I'm not giving the periods, but he can fighter.
Oh,
so he has.
So he was all three that are all right.
This is definitely something where it hits close to home, and according to him, he does. There's a portion of the proceeds from the sales of the cigar gets donated to charity.
Oh, awesome!
So definitely a nice story to it. When you said before the show that reminds you of a Macanudo Cafe series, that's where I was just like, I wonder what that day was, or like what, because it, people say it's like a medium plus or medium full. I don't, maybe strength wise, but it smokes like more of a, for me, it's a medium. And I think it's because a little bit of that little bit of the spices to it, it gives it a little bit more of a kick to it, to the smoke for me. Definitely. I mean, for me, it doesn't really remind me of a cafe series because it's a little
bit stronger, but it had, like, when I first smoked it, just the flavor kind of reminded me more so of that Macanudo Cafe.
Interesting. I got you. Yeah, it's definitely not a like hit you in the face. It's a very approachable cigar, and I really do enjoy it. I mean, he's got quite a portfolio for being like it was funny when he first called on the Tinderbox at Easton. I he's been around for whatever 20 some years, and his dad was in it before him, and I'm just like I'm sorry, I have not heard of you or Blanco Cigars. Brian, the owner of Tinderbox at Easton, he had said that he had met him years ago at a trade show.
Oh, really?
So it was something that some people know about it, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people haven't smoked Blanco cigars. I'm excited to have him being represented at the Smoking Tent event on March 18th here in Columbus, Ohio, just because it's something new for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And he's got a line of cigars. He's got the Reserva Familia that's going to be more of a Connecticut shade for his father's palate. And then he's got the Maduro, which is going to be a Pennsylvania broadleaf cigar, which is more towards his palate.
There's the Blanco 9.
There's the 9,
which I absolutely love,
which is a nice cigar. He's got obviously the Above and Beyond series. He has the Cigar Obsession series, which he collaborated with the gentleman that runs Cigar Obsession, which is a YouTube channel. It has a lot of followers and a lot of people from the cigar community that really trust that channel. And so he did a first third, second third, final third, and then there's a special one as well. And those might be featured also at the 10 event in some fashion as well. So interesting.
Well, so just based on what you said, the cigars that the Tinderbox carries from his portfolio, I've smoked all of those.
Yeah.
I'd have to say that final third is my absolute favorite. It also happens to be the most pricey. But
that is carried there, yeah.
I absolutely love the flavor on that cigar. And then that Blanco 9 actually reminds me a little bit of a BS Silver with how much pepper I get, especially in the retrohale on that cigar.
Yeah, it's a peppery cigar. It does have a lot of flavor to it. I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, especially since it's similar in size, the Rubito BS Silver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When was that size? The Chooch.
The Chooch. Yeah. I remember when we got those in, I was like, who the hell names a cigar the Chooch? Well, I'm sure it means something to somebody.
You can ask David because he does have a story for everything.
All right.
Definitely a fun interview.
I'll ask him in a couple months.
Yeah, for sure. If not, I hope that he's in Nicaragua now and will most likely be down there, I think, for at least 3 to 5 weeks. And then he's coming back and then we're one of his first stops because he comes back and then he goes to TPE. And then he comes to us. So we're excited about that. Or no, TP. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
You said that all the Above and Beyonds are torpedo. They're also all box pressed, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Very square box press, too.
It is.
This is what, the 7x54?
This is the 7x54, which is also called the Classic.
The Classic. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, I'm interested to see what you think as you get into it more. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm not saying, I'm not rating this a 10 by any means. I'm not like saying this is the best cigar I ever smoked, but I am interested to see what you have to say about it. And then for those of you, if you've had it or if you're going to try it, hopefully you've got some feedback for us as well. I do like the marketing. I think it's the flag on the top. I don't want to say it's gimmicky because I kind of like the triangle idea because of how you fold the flag, obviously, for a fallen first responder. So it's there's a bit of a gimmick to it, but there's a lot of story behind it, and I think it's respectful in a sense. Jonathan Heron says spoiler with the ratings. And sorry, it's not going to be a 10. You're right. How do you think it's pairing though?
I think it's actually pairing quite well. I think it's actually bringing out a little bit more sweetness in this whiskey.
Definitely.
One of our loyal listeners, Sean Anderson, said that this was like top 10 sweetest whiskeys he's ever had.
It's getting sweeter for sure.
Yeah, and on the and I was like, really? Because on the first pour, like there's not a whole lot of sweetness, but it's not like that caramel or like it was more like that kind of softer honey.
Yeah.
You said butterscotch
and vanilla.
But no, like as I'm smoking this cigar, there is starting to get a little bit more sweetness from the whiskey, but it's still not super heavy. in terms of the sweet. Like it's not a rich sweetness like caramel or molasses or syrup or something like that.
I got what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Like a sugary sweetness, not like a brown sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why we do this together. So we have different viewpoints, and sometimes it helps shed light on someone else.
Well, before we get to the ratings, we're about 30 minutes in. Do you want to talk a little bit about an update from last week?
Sure.
So for those that have been listening the last several weeks, and especially last week, Nate has been going through some
professional changes.
Yeah, let's call it that. Yeah, no, it's very positive. So you've been interviewing, from the previous episodes, you've been interviewing for a lot of times you talk about your career on here, your job and everything like that, and your past and your, all that stuff. And recently you've been interviewing for a new position. Yeah.
So last Monday I had an interview for a position. And then Wednesday I get a text message from that individual saying that they wanted to make me an offer, but they wanted to sit down and do it in person. Well, obviously couldn't do it Wednesday because got the podcast. So we did it Thursday. So last week when I was talking about it, I was waiting to see what the offer was going to be, whether it was going to hit what I was looking for. Because the opportunity, the responsibility, and what I would be doing definitely is something I'm excited for. It was just, could we make the numbers work? And so I had that meeting on Thursday, and sure enough, they were, above what I was asking for.
We don't need all those details.
No.
We don't need to talk finances here.
No. But no, so, I would start out there, and then after 6 months, if I meet certain criteria and metrics, then, so I'd actually start out part-time, or not part-time, hourly, but 40 hours a week. And then if I hit the criteria they're looking for after 6 months, then I would go salary.
What's the position? What are you going to be doing? I mean,
as
long as you're happy with what your compensation is, we're happy for you. We don't need to know the details here. I'm just saying, like, what is the job? What are we doing here? So
I actually asked my soon-to-be new boss that question because of a phone call he and I had this morning. He's not one really for titles. Basically, I'm going to be like what he called the sales ambassador at Carfagna's, which is an Italian market and restaurant that started in Columbus in 1937.
Family business,
Italian family.
Guess what their last name is?
Yeah, Carfagna.
Yeah,
right. So they used to have a market and wine shop off 161. They had a restaurant off of Polaris. Now they have everything in one location: the restaurant, wine shop, liquor store, the market, deli, everything all in one location off of Gemini, just one streetlight down from Cabela's.
So for those that aren't in the area, that's the north side of Columbus. It's on just north of 270, which is the outer belt. So if you're in the area, you would shoot north on 71, Interstate 71, and get off at the Gemini, which is the second exit to the right there. And that's where you find it. It's a beautiful building, beautiful property. Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, the person who was like the assistant manager of wine, beer, and spirits was leaving to take a job for a liquor distributor, like the second largest producer of distilled spirits in the world. Phone call today. Turns out that person's opportunity didn't work out the way they thought. So they're actually like that. He was kind of doing what you were doing.
No, so they're coming back.
Oh.
So the person I was going to be replacing is actually coming back to the store.
Yeah.
Which obviously, when he tells me that at the beginning of the phone call, makes me nervous.
You're like, whoops.
Because
put my 2 weeks in.
Yeah, because 2 days ago I put my 2 weeks in.
That was shitty. So what happened?
So because of my background with the podcast, with working in the cigar industry, the manager, the beverage director, who would be my boss, he was actually changing some of the role of the position to better suit the store and me.
Okay.
And basically, what he wants from me is kind of like how I work in, or how we all work in the cigar shop. Customers come in, they browse, and you're asking them questions, trying to see what they're looking for. So whether it be wine, bourbon, rum, tequila, scotch, whatever it is, what are you looking for? Are you looking for white wine, red wine, Italian, French? Finding budgets and trying to, um, find them what it is that they're looking for, while the other people that are doing the wine tastings can focus on the wine tastings.
Interesting.
So it's kind of a specialized focus and position.
Yeah.
Also, I would be doing videos whenever we would get new products or we're featuring products. I'd be doing a lot of wine tastings about stuff to bring in, spirit tastings
Nice.
about stuff to bring in. Originally, I was eventually going to get trained and be in charge of all the OHLQ ordering. So all the bourbon, Scotch, Irish, anything distilled spirit, I would be in charge of ordering and determining like what we would carry. I don't know if I'm going to still be doing that or if the previous person's still going to maintain that.
Sure.
But no, I'm definitely still excited because the plan is still as what they promised me. Like, no, this is what you're going to do. You're going to have the same metrics and criteria that we already talked about. Like, nothing's going to change. And I kind of look at it as more of, I get the opportunity to be more hyper focused on that aspect of
That'd be interesting. Yeah, it's great.
selling the wine, selling the spirits.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So I'm excited.
You start that in a couple weeks, yeah?
Yeah, I start that February 6th.
Keep us posted, and congratulations from all of us at the Bourbon and BS community. Nate.
So no, Sean, I'm not becoming a sommelier. My boss does not want me to get that certification. There are some certifications that he does eventually want me to get, but being a somm is not one of them. He does not want me to be able to know the flavor profiles of 1,000 different products.
He'd probably like that.
He probably would.
I'm not going to say no to it.
No, he wants me to know what our inventory is and know the different varietals.
Sure.
So know the main regions of the Italian wines, which are all listed on the back wall. Also, know the French, know the difference between a Cab Sauv and a Pinot Noir, or Zinfandel or Merlot, Malbec, Pinot Grigio, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that way, when customers come in, are you going to be drinking this on its own? Are you going to be drinking this with a meal? What are you making? And trying to find something that fits what it is would go best with what the occasion is.
Sure. I think that's great.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'm interested to see also how your metrics, especially with that one person coming back and possibly taking over, some of the old role or whatever it is. I mean, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. Hopefully it'll be all good because now you have more than enough, employee power to do like more and more. Because a lot of times you walk into, some, at least around here, you walk into some of the, the liquor stores, the wine stores. It's you don't have some personal attention really.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking for? Can I help you? It's even in a lot of like the grocery stores around us. It's just, kind of aisles.
Yeah.
No one there. You just have to kind of look at it and know what you're looking at or guess.
Yeah.
Buy based on label, based on what you know, based on price, based on whatever it might be. But that's a nice personal experience there, it sounds like.
Yeah. And when I was talking to my new boss about that, he's excited because then there's going to be, since the other person is coming back and I'm starting, there's going to be 3 of us outside of my boss who would be able to, bring in product, put stuff away, stock shelves, and still be able to run the sales floor and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
So there was going to be a little bit of a shortcoming with the way the staffing was, but with that person coming back, like right now, all they need now is just one other person working the wine tastings, and that's it. So it kind of helps alleviate some of the problems that were going to be there.
Yeah.
But now, because that person's coming back and they can focus on the other stuff they were doing, I can just focus on being that, what he called the sales ambassador on the floor, actually engaging and working with customers, making it that more personal experience. So that way, then my boss can focus on, as he said, growing the business. Because just in the last few years, so they have a wine club.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the last few years, their wine club went from 30 people to 400 people.
Great growth.
And so on Saturdays, that's one of their busiest days for doing the tastings. They'll be stacked 2-3 people deep the whole length of the bar trying to do all these tastings.
Yeah.
And so if someone's doing these tastings, but then wants to ask questions about other product on the floor, like that person doing the tastings either just pointing, telling them where to go, or they have to walk out from behind the bar, go engage them, while then other customers are at the bar not getting that same kind of attention. Well, so if they can stay behind the bar and do those tastings, I can be that person on the floor.
That's great.
And I'll just take, and you guys focus on that. Let me focus on that. We all work together, and hopefully we all do great things.
Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. And again, I think this is a nice move for you with, following some of your interests as well to complement some of your, obviously, skills, talents that you've worked on. So that's great.
Yeah. Well, and
should be some great customer service there.
Well, and like I said, part of it comes from my experience working at Tinderbox and doing the podcast, because those two experiences are kind of what made him want to change what the position I was going to be coming in to do were. And so because I have that background and the other person still has background working in, spirit retail from an ordering and stuff like that perspective, like that makes it to where I still have a job to go to in a couple weeks instead of that person coming back and I'm gone. Like, oh, sorry, we're going to rescind your offer.
Yeah.
But no, because that person wants me doing the videos and being on the floor, like that's all because of this podcast and, working in the retail primarily at the Tinderbox.
Sweet.
So thanks, Steve.
If you ask nicely, you can do Tasty Tuesdays, but I think you should have like wine.
I was going to ask you if I can borrow that. I was going to ask you if I could borrow the Tasty Tuesday.
And that's kind of my thing. It's a Tinderbox thing.
Well,
you could do Tasty Thursdays.
Oh, okay.
Tasty Thursdays, wine or whiskey Wednesdays.
Well, I don't work there on Wednesdays. My boss specifically did not want to put me on Wednesdays because of the podcast. And I was like, well, Thursday probably would have been a better day off.
So we're going to need some ideas from you guys out there on some of the things that he can do, and he'll keep us posted. But we're all rooting for you. I think it's fantastic. And again, I think it's great. All around. I think it's wonderful.
Well, and then there's one
scrumptious Saturdays, Jonathan says. It's going off the spirits of the wines.
Yeah.
Malbec, Merlot, or something Mondays.
There is a person that works there that does come into the Tinderbox, and because they're really the only cigar passion person that works at the store, they kind of do all the cigar ordering and what to carry.
Yeah.
Well,
Aaron, he's been
Aaron Garner.
Of the community. Yeah, Aaron Garner, yeah.
So he had posted the other day on the community page, and I messaged him, and I was like, hey, I didn't know if you would remember me from the Tinderbox or not, but then apparently I heard you were actually speaking to my boss. You were excited I was getting ready to start because you want me to take over the cigars already. And my boss is like, hold on. Let's let them get acclimated to this before we have them do all the cigar ordering and stuff.
See what happens. Thirsty Thursday, Jonathan says. We got all the days covered for you.
I'll do it whenever we get new product in.
Sazerac Saturday.
That was last Saturday. Yeah. It was a good Saturday. You got a bottle?
I did.
I got a bottle.
Actually got stocked up between Kristen over the Giant Eagle, and then I lucked out with Andy over the Kroger here. hooked me up last week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Andy, if you're listening tonight, which he does, I didn't stop by tonight, but if Andy's listening, appreciate that. I mean, he didn't really like he did hook me up, but I mean, like it wasn't like they were hidden. They were like, I was looking at they were sitting right by the register, and he's like, "Well, did you want one of these?" So, and I won't say anything else because I don't want to get him in trouble. But yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. I don't ask me to try and hold bottles for you or anything like that. Come in like everybody else does.
All right, let's get back. Again, congratulations. On this cigar, I cut it down a little bit. Torpedoes can be funny sometimes because if you don't cut down enough, sometimes they smoke, but as you're smoking them, there's a little bit of a buildup, right?
Yeah, sometimes it'll get a little bit moist and it'll be harder to pull through.
Yeah, you just made several people cringe probably.
Gets a little wet.
Yeah, right. It's not much better. But yeah, so I cut it down a little bit and I have a much stronger draw, more flavor coming through. I mean, I'm not like super far down, but I cut it down a little bit further
than where I'm at.
I think so. Yeah. I don't know how your draw is, but this is
my
definitely...
draw's been like the one I just took. Like there was still smoke coming out of the open head of this.
I'm getting a lot more spice on this cigar as I'm getting closer to the band.
Well, I mean, that the rest of that cigar does kind of act like a filter.
Sure.
And having that torpedo, when you smoke it, it kind of concentrates and funnels all that smoke right there at the tip.
It does. We've got more ideas coming through here about days of the week. But this is the time of the first part of the podcast where we do our ratings. So we appreciate you guys listening. If this is your first time, make sure you share it, like it, review it. Give us some feedback on the show. We like to have guests on here. Sometimes doing it every week, we don't line it up. And there have been a couple thoughts there where we just do the show on Wednesdays when we have guests. But I don't think we're there yet. I think we're still enjoying doing this every week with you guys. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it as well. But it does bring a different dynamic. And maybe you guys like it. I know I like it sometimes when it's just us and the audience, because that's a different type of show than it is with, when we have a guest, we're focusing on the guest. So
I like the consistency of whether it's a guest or just the two of us.
Sure.
There's the consistency of always doing a show, always providing a product,
some sort of content
to our listeners.
Yeah. So this is where we do the rating at the end of part one. Then we take a quick intermission. We stay live on the feed and on the video, but on the audio, it'll be a part one and part two. So Jonathan says the guests really get in the way. This is after I told him today when we were texting. He asked what we were smoking and drinking tonight. I said, we need to get you back on the show. And then he says that. So some of the guests get in the way.
Well, he would be remote too. So
sure. Rating time. Whiskey. So it's best is a 10 rating. And you do 3 ratings: the whiskey, the cigar, and the pairing. Nate, I'm going to defer to you here. So the whiskey being the Bernheim Original Wheat Whiskey, and the cigars, the Blanco Above and Beyond, and then the pairing. 3 ratings out of 10.
So whiskey, I'm going to be a 7 on the whiskey.
Okay.
It's enjoyable. There's nothing really negative about it. It's just the flavors that are there aren't really bold or rich. They're all kind of subtle. I mean, I think the most potent flavor out of this is more that wood flavor. I was saying oak, you were saying mesquite.
Yeah.
Just kind of but still wood notes. Not a lot of sweetness, even though one of our listeners said it's one of the sweetest things he's ever drank. By itself, I don't think there's a whole lot of sweetness because it's wheat. It's not corn. Even though it still has a decent amount of corn in it, 37% on the mash bill, you're still looking at 63% other stuff. So it's not as sweet as a lot of the bourbons that we've had or that we're used to, or even as sweet as some of the ryes that we've also had. I think some of the ryes have, a deeper, richer flavor to them than possibly this.
It's
but
different.
Again,
it's different. Yeah.
It's a different product, different mash bill. I think for $30, it's a good bottle to go out and try.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our listeners know I'm one of those people that I love trying to find really good bottles that are under that $30 price point. I think at $29.99 in the state of Ohio, like this is a bottle that you should go out and try. And I bought this at Carfagna's today on my way here.
Looky there, full circle.
I had not seen it in other liquor stores. And so a month ago when I first went to Carfagna's, I saw this on the shelf and took a picture of it. And then Wes Claudfelter, that we just had on the podcast last month, who works at Watershed, he actually bought a bottle. Like, he and I were talking about it, and he ended up buying a bottle of this.
I'm interested to see what he has to say about it.
Yeah. So yeah, I sold a bottle of whiskey before at Carfagna's before I ever started working at Carfagna's.
Yeah.
Not the first one either. I sold 5 on Monday. Just hanging out.
Good at something. You're good at something. Don't do it for free.
Yeah. So yeah, Sean, that's your palate. Sean gets a lot of sweetness from wheated whiskeys.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
how about the cigar?
Cigar, I'm a 7 as well.
Okay, 7 and 7.
It's an enjoyable.
Speak of the devil, Aaron Garner just tuned in.
Hey, hi, Aaron. Yeah, 7 on the cigar. It's an enjoyable cigar. You said medium. I put it just a hair lighter than that. Not mild, but kind of somewhere that mild medium, pushing medium. It's great construction. Haven't had any issues with the construction. It's the wrapper's got that kind of velvet type of texture to it.
It's a well constructed cigar.
Yeah, and I mean, he says coming out of Plasencia, so
correct. Yeah,
I mean, it hits that. It's good construction, good tobacco. It's a good cigar. There's nothing that really stands out and wows me about it.
Okay, 7 and a 7.
Pairing, bump it up a little bit. Give pairing a 7.5. I think smoking the cigar, drinking the whiskey, actually, because of some of the wood notes that we get from this cigar, also kind of dries out the palate a little bit. So when you drink the whiskey, it actually highlights the subtle sweetness that is in this whiskey and kind of makes it a little bit richer. So I think by themselves, they're good. They're better together. And I did a decimal just for you, Jonathan Herring. No, I'm kidding.
What was the rating?
So 7.5.
Love it. We said it was funny. Yeah, he wrote decimal. I'll put it up on the screen there. Decimal drink. That's what Jeff Reagan said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't do radio, but we do a podcast.
We do. Thanks for listening. Tune in each week.
You just uploaded some of the recent ones this week, didn't you?
I did. I've got a couple more to do. We're going to be caught up here shortly, and then I'll have this one live or available on all the podcast apps, and we'll see where we can go from there. So yeah, that helps us out too. So we got contacted by someone that was a PR, like a third-party PR firm for a distillery, and they wanted to know if we knew our stats. So the more people that subscribe, you guys share it. I know it doesn't seem like much to you guys, but not only does it give us a little bit more credibility and we can get some more reach to more people, which is the big goal.
Yeah.
But it does help us get some guests when I can show them that, like, hey, we get this many views a week on Facebook. We get this many YouTube views, which we don't push much traffic to, and we get this many downloads or subscribers to the podcast app. So more people that like the podcast page on Instagram and Facebook, that at least listen for a little bit of time to count as a view on Facebook, join the Bourbon and BS community page. And then also, even if you don't listen to, like, say you listen to it on a live or video, do us a favor and subscribe and download, even if you want to delete it, but download on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. It allows us to reach out to maybe some of the bigger distilleries. I have a lot of contacts in the cigar world, but also there's some cigar companies that I'm not as tight with. So it's like, that would be something that I can reach out and be like, hey, you're going to, get a hold of through an episode on average, this many thousands of listeners. And that'll get us more content for you guys to enjoy. And everyone that's been on here, cigar shop owners, cigar company owners, reps, brand ambassadors, distillers, everything, they seem to enjoy this live content, which is really you guys that are listening live. They appreciate that, because most podcasts that they do are recorded, edited, and not as raw as the conversation that we have. And I posted that, I don't know, it's a day or so ago on the, I think it was the Bourbon and Podcast page or the community page, that it was like, I just love the raw content. It was mostly with like Ryan Ponus last week from Alec Bradley.
Yeah.
It's not a scripted show. It's just more of a talk show. And I love that about that.
Well, and I do have that spreadsheet where I try and keep track of the views and stuff for that occasion. When someone asks,
Sure.
like, "Hey, what are you like?" All right, here you go. Here's, ever since we started doing this, here's the list of.
And I'm not pleading my case. We just need a little bit more of a push, and hopefully you guys are interested. And maybe it's just the fact that, again, everyone got busy, but we went from 3,000 to 5,000 views a week. Facebook did change the way that people get notified and all that stuff. But right now we're pushing 1,000 again, which I appreciate. So with your guys' help, I hope at least on Facebook, we can break 1,000 every week. And then with all the audio stuff, like I said, even if you're not a podcast listener or you prefer to watch us live or on the video, which I love this format, the video side of things. Yeah, it helps out. For me, the whiskey, I'm going to give it a 7.5.
All right.
And I think it's because, yes, for the price, it gives me a little bit more. I'm getting, I know you said you didn't get as much. I'm getting more of that vanilla and almost butterscotch type of a thing. Not quite what we used to talk about with the Werther's Original, but I'm getting it's like a spicy Werther's. They should do that.
Spicy Werther's.
Not spicy, but for a Werther's Original, it's spicy.
All right.
Okay. So I'm getting a little bit of that. I like the flavor. I think it's a little unique. I think it's fun.
Since we've both given our whiskey ratings, would you like me to go over the notes that Heaven Hill puts on this product?
I would like that very much. And then I'll give the rest of my ratings.
Aroma, mildly sweet, hints of vanilla and honey.
Son of a bitch.
Taste.
Sign me up.
Hints of toffee, berries, and spice.
Okay.
Finish, toasted oak, elegant and warm.
Elegant's not a flavor. Warm is borderline.
That's a feel.
It's more of a feel. The cigar, I'm going to give an 8. I like this cigar. I think this one builds. That's why I was curious what you were thinking, because when you said that about being like a Jonathan Herring, not your grandfather's Werther's. I love that. Put that on the screen. I think it does build. I think it's a true medium for me. Looking it up online, I'm curious what David Blanco would say, but people are saying medium to full. I wouldn't classify it as that. I'd say medium for sure. And I do think that I'm about halfway through. I had to take the band off because it is a little bit more of a substantial band.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something where it's not like a huge band, but I've taken it off, and I think it builds with some of those flavors that I've really enjoyed. The pairing, to me, it's not a bad pairing. It's just nothing special about it. You know what I mean? I think it does bring out some sweetness from the whiskey, and a little bit, maybe it's bringing out, that's why I'm getting a little bit more of the spice and the through the retrohale and everything else on the cigar. But I think that they pair well, but I'm going to give the pairing a 7. It's not a bad pairing. It's nothing that I'm like thrilled about. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, we got to do this.
Yeah,
exact thing again. But I think it's an enjoyable.
Well, and I brought 2 different whiskeys tonight. There was this one, and then I brought a barrel.
What we're gonna do.
Yeah, I brought a barrel strength rye, an MGP rye. So chances are it's their famous 95.5 rye mash bill at 112.9 proof. Brought both of those bottles, and then Steve showed me what we were going to be smoking. I was like, let's do this bottle.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, because I think that rye would have overpowered this cigar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would overpower it. And then with that whiskey, I still have about a half a bottle of a OHLQ, so Ohio liquor pick of that. So it'll be interesting if we sample a little bit of both.
And that's another thing I'm looking forward to with the new job. Sometimes when OHLQ does tastings for state picks, sometimes they are scheduled at Carfagna's that I'll be working at.
Nice.
So I won't have to travel for that. And my boss, he's like, yeah, if you get the opportunity to do one of those, I want you to do one of those. Because he'll also he takes us to wine tastings as well.
Have you confirmed about March yet?
March 9th. I did bring that up. He's good at whether it's at Carfagna's or if I have to go to it because it's 3:00 in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be able to go.
Better let her know.
I will.
Because I am going. So we'll keep you guys up to date on that. We did get invited to participate in a barrel pick. Not going to give the details of which company or distillery and all that stuff, but you will definitely hear more about it as it gets closer. And then obviously afterwards, our experience with that, which I'm excited about. So that's going to be coming up in March. A lot of stuff going on in March. That, and then obviously the Smoking 10 event. And that we're going to round out here part 1, roll over to part 2, Beyond the BS for episode 255. But I do want to thank again our Patreon members, patreon.com/bourbon and BS podcast. You guys are amazing. Definitely helps us out and keeps this show going. And this is always the fun time that I go into my accountant, and because it's not, I mean, again, not saying like we appreciate it all. It's not like we're making thousands of dollars off this, tens of thousands of dollars. It's something that this is something that keeps it going. So basically, my accountant's like, all right, so what's your internet bill? What's this? It kind of itemizes it so we break even on that. But it definitely helps out. And again, the more the merrier, the more that it helps. I'm happy to process those fees and see what we can do. We've talked about doing a set remodel. So maybe that would be a springtime thing, because right now I don't think we need to be all comfortable and stretched out on some nicer chairs and everything like that when we're
no.
This is fine. This is great. Venmo at Bourbon and BS for the one-time contributions. Thank you very much. And also Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. This Blanco line is there. The Blanco Above and Beyond is available in a few sizes, so check them out if you're in the area, or if you want them to ship, they'll absolutely do that. About once a week they do shipping, so we can get something set up for you there. So contact Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, and shop localish. Altadis USA, we got the Romeo y Julieta Reserva Real, which is a great mild to medium cigar as well. Not quite as much spice, I don't think, as the Above and Beyond, but great cigar. And then also BS Cigar Company. The gold and silver are available. We love both of those. Common theme there is that the gold is made by Plasencia, who is also going to be at the Smoking 10 event, March 18th. And the silver is made by Espinosa, which that company will also be at the Smoking 10 event. So, yeah, looking forward to that.
I remember Jonathan Herron saying as many times as we either smoke Plasencia or mention Plasencia, it's a shock that we don't have them as a sponsor.
We'll work on that. Let's get those views up and everything I just mentioned. And then hopefully we can get more people, more companies that want to sponsor us and get their logos behind us. I mean, Altadis is not too shabby being one of the largest in the world. So we'll take that.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And then buyjack.com/bourbon and BS. Guys, check out the swag. Very easy to use and navigate the site. And they are prompt on the delivery. They print to order. So whenever you're feeling it, go ahead and do that. I think the more you buy, it does help out on shipping a little bit, because they do have to ship to you. So if you're looking, grab a couple of things or a few things just to save on your shipping and make it worth your while. It's nothing crazy, but it's nice.
I'm wondering if I should get another one of the camo hoodies just because I got a little cigar burn right here.
You did. So maybe I need to come out with another color for that one. So we'll see. Guys, thank you very much. Happy Whiskey Wednesday, and stay warm where you're at. I know a lot of the country here in the U.S. is experiencing a lot of storms, so be safe, take care of each other, and cheers, guys.
Cheers.
And for those of you that are listening live, this is where we do a quick intermission, and we probably won't take long. Do you need to take a break, or are you good?
I'm good for now.
Good for now. We'll see where it goes.
Just the two of us, so I hope I'm good.
Well, because if I go into a monologue,
yeah. Well,
now that you say that, I'm kind of no. We'll roll through it. And once again, congratulations on the job. That's awesome, man.
Thank you. Yeah, Jonathan Herring was asking if it was Starlight. I wish it was, but they're not in Ohio yet. So.
Not Starlight. I'd like to get them back on here remotely. We've got Josh Bentley, who's been on the show multiple times. He's kind of moved up in the company. He and I are working on a special one, not with them this time, but he's got a contact that we're going to hopefully get on the show from another distillery. We really enjoy their products. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
You're not going to tell our listeners? You're not going to tell our... Oh, yeah, all right. That's exciting.
I don't know if you heard that. Hopefully you didn't. Hopefully it's still a surprise, but we're working on it. Some things are in the works.
Yeah, so one thing that's cool about the gentleman I'm going to be working with at my new job. So prior to him working at Carfagna's as the beverage director, because it's wine, beer, and spirits that he oversees. He actually owned a wine store in Dublin for like 20 years.
Dublin, Ohio?
In Dublin, Ohio. So the dude knows his shit. But he's obviously he's a wine guy. He's also a Scotch guy.
Nice.
So he doesn't really care for bourbons.
Get him on the show.
Yeah, that was another reason why he was excited to have me come on, because I do know a little bit more about the bourbons that we have. But then also when we were talking, he's like, all right, so outside of the whiskey, like what else do you enjoy? And I was like, well, I actually enjoy tequila more than I do rum, but rum would be tequila, then rum, and then your neutral grain spirits. And he just pointed at me, he's like, I like it, because I think tequila is the next one to blow up outside of the celebrity products.
Yeah, then rum.
And then rum. And I was like, yeah, these are the rums and that are really popular, but they're also artificially sweetened or flavored. Whereas I like the ones that are more natural and a little cleaner. The same thing with the tequilas. I don't necessarily care for the ones that are, with a celebrity behind them, because they're, some of them tend to be a little overpriced, and they're buying so much agave that some of the smaller ones that have been around for decades, they're having a hard time getting agave plants to be able to produce their products, because you just have these celebrity ones that are just buying all the shit up.
I do like some of the celebrity ones. I do like Casamigos. I like Terramana. I like
Casamigos is the reason why all the celebrities are getting behind it.
Sure.
They're the one that started it, because they went from nothing.
Cabo Wabo was, I think, out there before that.
Cabo Wabo was there before it, but Cabo Wabo from Sammy Hagar didn't really blow up. But Casamigos, with George Clooney and his buddy behind it, in a 4-year span, they went from nothing and then sold it for $1 billion.
Yeah, I think Cabo Wabo, just a side note, I think it was because of his club down there too.
Yeah.
He was kind of doing a house tequila.
Yeah. So once he came out, once
now he's working with Guy Fieri.
Yeah, exactly, which is awesome. But yeah, once Casamigos sold for $1 billion, then it's like all of a sudden The Rock has one, and then Kardashian. Yep, the Kardashian one came out. Then LeBron came out with
Jordan
one,
and the other owners of the NBA.
Yeah.
Hey man, tequila is great. I'm a big fan.
There's actually a tequila dinner coming up. I think it's tomorrow at Carfagna's.
All right. Well, if you don't have any plans tomorrow, check it out. All right. You ready?
Yep.
It's Jonathan Aaron. So does the entire NBA. It's what ruined. All right. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 255, and we are in part 2, Beyond the BS. Tonight, we are going to be talking about, and we always talk about a topic or some sort of conversation piece. Tonight, we're going to talk about manners. Not sure where it's going to go. It was actually spawned off of a suggestion I posted in the Bourbon and BS community page. Bobby Hirschman, who's been a loyal listener. I haven't seen him on tonight. So maybe we should comment and say Bobby Hirschman on the feed just to get his attention.
I'll do that.
We're going to be talking about manners. He brought it up as far as like cigar shop etiquette. And I was like, well, maybe we can expand on that a little bit. So we can talk about cigar shop etiquette for those that are into the world of cigars, but also for those that aren't, that like to listen to part 2. We can definitely kind of move on beyond that. It's cigar shop etiquette. It's not easy, but I mean, it's all based on what a lot of people say is common sense. A lot of people say common sense is not really a thing anymore.
It's not common.
It's not common. Jonathan Herring. Love it. Sean Anderson's Bobby brought up manners. Well, not specifically. I churched it up a little bit and broadened it like I try to do.
Yeah. Bobby's was more related to cigar shop etiquette. But
manners, I think a lot of it goes back to, and this goes to cigar shop etiquette too. So we can talk about a little bit of both, but I do want to kind of broaden the scope for those listeners that aren't cigar smokers. But it's funny because I think a lot of it has to do with, manners is based on respect, whether it's founded or not, right? Whether or not you know the person or not, but it's just a common just respect for your fellow person. Until they deserve no respect, that type of thing. You know what I mean?
Manners maketh man.
Yes. I like manners. It does take some effort for some. It's not always easy. So now we got Irving out there. Rodriguez. He wants to talk about cigar etiquette. I'm going to get to that here. I was just going to broaden the scope here a little bit. Manners are absolutely, it's out of respect. And that goes into what he just said. I can put up on the screen here momentarily, but it is absolutely in the way that you talk to people, you address people. It's the way that you respond to people. The fact you do respond to people. It's not just, it's not just you're not the most important person to everyone else.
Really?
Well, you might be, but
No.
Irving, he said he's a PDR cigar sales rep. Welcome, Irving. Love having you on here. But it's like, it's like manners. It's respect for everyone else. And like I said, it's until they maybe not deserve your respect based on actions. But at the same time, you almost want to respond not necessarily in line with the way that they are acting, but you keep your manners. You try to be polite. You try to explain, communicate. We talk about communication a lot on part 2, but it's about the fact that it's, to a lot of us, it may be common sense. It may be the way that you were raised, but I mean, for some, I think for everyone, it does take a little bit of effort. You know what I mean? To not kill them with kindness, but have some respect for, in the cigar shop or elsewhere, respect for the establishment. Don't walk into places, cigar shop or otherwise, just demanding. Say things like, please. You can have, common courtesy, ask how someone's day is, even if you don't know them, you don't really care. But, it's just making conversation. So it's not just the nuts and bolts. It's restaurants, coffee shops. It's really just anything everywhere. It's just addressing people as people. Not just as below you, or, it's like you walk in and all you do is complain about shit. It's like, don't go there. Like it's not your place.
You talking about that, like asking people how their day is. That's something that I started doing last year when I would be working at the shop and I would go next door to Chipotle and get food.
Yeah.
Like it'd be most of the time it's busy, and they're making all these orders and everything, and I go up there and like I actually ask the person who's going to be making my food, how's your day going? And because usually they have to sit there and go, what kind of rice, what kind of beans, what kind of meat,
and to that point,
but I'll sit there and go,
manners sometimes on the other side of it
are
lost too.
True, but I'll sit there and I'll just right up front say, white rice, black beans, half steak, half barbacoa. So that way you don't have to ask all those same questions. I'll just go ahead and tell you what I want, because it's going to save you from asking. But also, like, I will sit there and actually ask them about their day and respond back and actually engage them in conversation, just because it breaks the rut that sometimes they find themselves in working fast food.
Sure.
Because usually you just have people pointing at stuff saying, I want more of this. That's not right. Redo it. And, they don't necessarily get a lot of respect. But when you actually go in there and you actually show, like, I'm going to actually ask you, like, how's your day going? It looks like it's busy. It sucks that you're the only one back here on the line making the food and everything, or whatever it is. Just genuinely show that, like, that you care and you want them to hopefully be having a good day. Chances are they may not be, but it's like, I'm still going to ask, because then it kind of changes the dynamic to where I'm not the customer coming in going, it's all about me. It's like, I'm actually showing a genuine interest in you. Now, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it works out because they might give you a little discount on your food, but that's not why I do it. I don't do it for that reason.
No, it pays to be nice, I'd say, a lot of times. Sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, again, it's more towards, the way your day is going. I mean, again, you can do the same thing and just be rude and all that stuff. And obviously you're just pissed off at yourself and the world. So, keep doing that. And that's what you're going to get as a result. I love the conversation here. And again, I know that, like, Irving was on here. We can talk about cigar etiquette, give a little bit of time for that or sometime. But, Sean Anderson saying, the last few generations think it's all about them all the time, or like, and Jonathan Herring, I love the fact that he brings up the boomers made them, so the previous generations groom the current ones that And it's always the case, you know, the younger generation doesn't, you know, respect or always like what the older generation did. And it's like, well, this is a cycle. This happens all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just kind of, it's comical to me that we deal with this just like previous generations dealt with it and all that stuff. And, you know, that's just the way that it works, because that is absolutely a fact. You know, the fact that everyone's pissed off that everyone's in their face and their phone and all that stuff. Well, those phones didn't just come out of anywhere. You know, all this stuff was created by the people that made them for the people. And now that people are growing up with new technology, they're all pissed off that, oh, they're always looking down their phone. It's like, well, we fucking should have made them then. not a fucking 12-year-old's fault that I'm looking at. I was just driving to my mom's house on Monday. And it was like, live right by elementary school. She does, right?
Okay.
I actually went there for 4th and 5th grade, and kids are running down, you know what I mean? There's snow, like, maybe not snow, but it's just, school just let out on Monday. And, you know, the kids are all, and these are elementary kids, phones in their hands. And it's like, you know, there's a lot of people like, oh, they should have fun. Well, again, this is what it is. Everyone expects that. So that's part of the whole.
When did you get your first cell phone, Steve?
When I got a job.
But I mean, like, how old were you? Or what grade were you in school, or was it after? I actually
had a cell phone.
I was a senior in high school.
When I first had a cell phone, it was a work cell phone when I was 21 years old.
Okay.
After college.
All right. So you and I would have been about the same time, because you're 3 years older than me.
2002.
Right.
And then I first owned a cell phone when I thought about updating my resume, and I shouldn't put my work cell phone as my contact information.
Probably not.
That's the cell phone I still have now. Not the cell phone number. But let's go back to cigar etiquette here real quick before we'll jump back to some of these comments here. But cigar shop etiquette, I love Jonathan being sarcastic. I'll pull up these, right? So he says, my cigar shop etiquette. Number 1, always bring my own cigars. Nope. Never. You can, but again, you have to either pay a cutting fee at the shops that require it, but it's to buy something. You bringing your own contents into any establishment does not pay the bills. It doesn't even keep the electric on. You don't spend any money at an establishment. It's not a charity. It's not a YMCA. This is something that
be like taking your own beer into a bar.
Beer into a bar, your own food into a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's, you know, literally, yeah. I mean, it's not, unless they do have a cutting fee. If there's a policy there that you can bring your own cigars, do it. Talk lots of politics and religion. Again, I think he's making a point here. I know he's making a point here.
Yeah.
Is typically you don't want to bring that stuff up. You don't want to have confrontation, because no one likes to be, you know, some people like to have those conversations, and it does get to that sometimes.
But cigar shops are supposed to be relaxing.
Right.
Those aren't topics that are relaxing to discuss, typically.
Number 3, talk only about other cigar shops nearby. Point being there, and this is a great exercise, because point being right there is, in Irving Rodriguez says, etiquette number 1, support your shop. That's what I'm talking about. It's fine if you go to other shops. You support the community. You go to other cigar shops in the area. You're from out of town, whatever it might be. There's no reason to talk bad about or good about other shops. Bad about the shop you're in, or good about other shops that you're at. Again, these are manners. You know, you don't get invited to someone's house and you talk about how, oh, my friend has a bigger TV than that. Oh, this couch is nice, but you should see mine. It's like, no one likes you at that point, right? So no one wants to hear that shit.
Well, it's the same thing. I think
you say thank you for having me.
I think it's also same thing with people that are working in cigar shops or for cigar companies. You don't necessarily want to go around bad mouthing other shops or other companies.
That's professionalism, which is also
because the cigar community is a tight community. Word travels very fast. And if you're going around bad mouthing other companies or other shops, it will find you out.
Sure. Number 4, praise Cuban cigars. And he did comment. He says, yes, I was being sarcastic. Praise Cuban cigars. You can talk about it. You know, I get asked about my trip to Cuba because it was very, very educational and it's very memorable and wonderful. But, you know, don't necessarily badmouth Cuban cigars. Don't praise Cuban cigars. This is something where it's like, for those that aren't in the cigar community that listen to part 2, don't talk about stuff that's unavailable. That's not, you know what I mean? It's irrelevant. And don't do it just because, you know, oh, I just smoke Cubans. It's kind of like, I only drink whiskeys that aren't available. It's like, cool, man, but like nice,
Yeah.
like who
Or
doesn't matter.
I don't drink whiskeys that are under $70. I don't smoke cigars that are under $20. I only smoke. It's like, guess what? Average person doesn't smoke what you smoke or drink what you drink, and that's what keeps the lights on in all those businesses.
Along that line in a cigar shop and also at a bar, at a restaurant, whatever the may be, again, the one-upper. So if someone's enjoying something that you think is a bad cigar, cheap cigar, or whatever, you'd be like, oh, that thing's shit. Like, why would you smoke that? It could be their favorite cigar. It could be the cigar that the grandfather smoked. It could be something that you don't understand. So, like, again, keep it to yourself. Ask questions. What do you like about that cigar? Why are you smoking that? Have you had this? I'm smoking this. I like this. That you might like it too. Work through a conversation and be, I think it's really just, again, the manners of how you converse with someone else, no matter what the scenario is or what the environment is or what the topic is. This is something where it's just a communication issue. And I think a lot of this comes with etiquette.
Well, and to that, you get the age-old, sometimes people ask, especially newer cigar smokers, I think, taking the band off or leaving it on.
Yeah.
Like, usually I leave the band on simply because it's a place to hold the cigar in your fingers. There are some people out there, though, that they will leave their band on only because they want to showcase what it is they're smoking, because they think what they're smoking is better than what anyone else is smoking. And that's the wrong attitude to go into it. Smoke what you like. Not everyone has the same palate. Not everyone has the same pocketbook. So not everyone can sit there and afford to smoke $100 Davidoff Royal Releases.
And not everyone cares what you think. Is another thing you have to remember. Number 5, ash all over the floor. That's definitely not a thing. Again, you want to use the ashtrays. You want to pick up after yourself when you leave. Cigar shops, even restaurants sometimes, obviously I'm not saying bust your own tables, but at the very least, try to organize it. Don't just leave a mess for someone else. Don't be that person. Don't be that guy. It's just like being over at someone's house. Pick up, offer. Hey, can I help you with the dishes? Can I help, put stuff away? Whatever it might be. Can I help? They say no. Okay, that's fine. But you know what I mean? These are the manners that you have in a cigar shop, much the same way. I love it when people will walk up to me with like their empty, water bottle or, they're like, hey, do you have a trash can? And normally it's like, here, I got you. If they're already like closer to it, I'm like, yeah, it's right there. But a lot of times it's like, yeah, I'll get it for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hey, what do you want me to do with this ashtray? Love that. Nothing. Leave it there. We got it. You know what I mean? These are those things those are the manners that really go a very, very
Or they
long
apologize
way.
if like the ash fell off their cigar, rolled off their stomach and landed on the floor.
Things happen. You're talking, you're not paying attention, whatever. You get excited, you wave your hand, whatever. Like it's not the end of the world, but it is something. So Jonathan, thank you for putting that up there. That is a very good exercise to go through. Cigar shop etiquette, again, I think it's something that with the manners being involved, it truly is respect what you're walking into. No one, I will say this, there are very few people, I'd almost go as far to say no one really wants to try to, like, you're not impressing anyone by trying to impress the staff, impress the other people smoking that you know more than them. It is a huge turnoff and it's not good manners. It's always better to ask questions and try to appreciate your surroundings and the people that you're around or the establishment that you're in, your neighbor's house, your friend's house, whatever it is. You are there as a guest. And I think from the professional side of it, they are your guests and you should treat them accordingly. Your day goes so much smoother if this is followed. 100%.
I think same thing could be said when going out to a restaurant. Like, don't treat the wait staff like shit. Like, don't sit there and berate them. If they make a mistake, guess what? Chances are, yes, it could be your server wrote down the wrong thing when you mentioned your order. It could be the person in the kitchen that's making it read something wrong or made a mistake. If the kitchen made a mistake, it doesn't do you any good to sit there and berate the server.
No.
Have you ever heard of the people that sit there and like they'll lay a stack of ones on the table?
Yeah.
And like they tell the server like, hey, that's your tip starting out. Every time you screw up, I'm going to take $1 away.
That was from like a movie, and then everyone started doing it. Not everyone, but assholes did.
Assholes did it. There you go.
I like, let's see, where is it out here? missed it there. Yeah, Sean, who's been on the podcast before, he was in town last March as well for the Smoking Tent event last year. I always stack and clean the table we use at restaurants, then over tip according to the servers. I'm not sure why most people are oblivious. Tipping, over tipping, that's another. I mean, it is part of the conversation maybe when it comes to that side of things. Again, when you're a guest, you ask, again, stack and clean the table. I mean, yeah, it's nice to do. But don't, never, I'm not saying he does, but also you don't overstep, because part of the manners is, you don't carry him up to the dish tray and, set your dish. Like, that's not really your job.
Well,
so if you're helping out, like, hey, can I set him up at the very least, maybe put him in a neat place as opposed to just your shit everywhere on the table.
Well, and since we're talking about cigar shop etiquette, if you are a customer and you are hanging out in a cigar shop, unless another customer asks you, like, what are you smoking? What do you think I should try? Let the staff at the shop do their job. The staff is there for a reason. You don't work there. Let them do your job. You wouldn't go to a restaurant and then go start bussing tables or bringing people their drinks.
Sean Anderson might.
But no, because I remember years ago, and this is just because when I'm in a cigar shop, I'm a friendly guy. There was years ago, I was hanging out at the tinderbox, and I was sitting towards the front, and I was just saying hi to people that walked in. I wasn't necessarily engaging them in conversation. I was just saying hi. And then one of the staff members there was like, hey, you don't work here. Let me do that.
Yeah.
Because if you sit there and greet everyone, they think you're working there and they're going to start asking you questions.
Which you'll answer.
I didn't at that time. Usually, a lot of times back then, I would sit there and say, oh, I'm just hanging out here. This person works here. That just kind of makes it a little awkward. But a staff member at the shop was like, hey, you don't work here. Let me do that. Like, you just sit there and smoke your cigar. Let me be the person that greets the customers and asks them what they want. Quit trying to work here when you don't work here.
Interesting. It is. I've been at, say, like right next door at the pub next door to Tinderbox. And when there are people just standing at the front door, I've been there enough that I can lean back and be like, you can actually sit wherever you'd like. Because that's all that someone says to them. You know what I mean? I'm not going to take their order or, hey, sit wherever you like. Also try the soup of the day. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing that shit. But it is. That's, again, I think that's nice manners to say hi to someone, but you have to, again, know your surroundings and what the environment calls for. You know what I mean? So what else? You guys want to talk about? You guys have a pub next door? Yeah, we do. We absolutely do.
Let me ask you this, Steve. Over what we've gone through since the start of 2020, do you think manners is something that's become lost on people?
I think, no.
Like how to interact and how to communicate with people. And
we've come kind of, I think, full circle. I think everyone, has become reacclimated of what they were like before, majority wise. Some people, I think, had a learning experience. I think, it was a great social experiment when it comes to the fact that there were people that were much more appreciative of social interaction. I think that some people also lost their way when they were forced to not have social interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Technology was one thing. Well, now you see that the fact that everyone was doing the technology thing, now you see all these tech companies and the online retailers are laying off mass amounts of people. So I think that that's something that you see that we're coming back around to a little bit of some lessons learned. We talked about on the podcast in part 2 a lot of time. I was hoping that a lot of people, myself included, would come out of that kind of a situation with best practices. Manners, I think some people did benefit from, as far as getting better at them, or at least getting a kind of a wake-up call that, oh my God, I've been kind of distant from people that are important to me, distant from strangers, all that stuff, right? But I think overall, I think it's gone back to the same thing. I think it's like, there's a lot of rude drivers. People don't use their turn signals. I think there's a lot of people that won't say hi. They come in, they just bark orders. They're so wrapped up in their own life. It's the same thing that we've talked about before. Like, so at a shop like the Tinderbox, people walk in on their phone. They look around. They say, oh, this isn't Chipotle, or, oh, like I'm in the wrong place. It's like they didn't even say hi. They didn't say like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. They're just like, look around and they just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Or they walk in and, looking at customer service side of things. For a while there, I think it was wonderful where people were a little bit more polite. They're happy to get back out. They to have a conversation because they hadn't had personal conversations in a while. Now you get a lot of people back out that are back in their old routine. And instead of like when you say, hey, how you doing today? You looking for anything in particular? It's not, hey, how are you? I'm looking for this. They go back to this dialogue that is equivalent to texting, right? Is there anything I can help you find? And they just blurt out a brand name or a certain cigar. Yep, right over here. And they look at you and they just like literally just hold up like a 2. They don't say anything. Like you've tried to say that and people just like, what, Padron. Oh, they're right over here. They point, touch the glass, and they just say 2. And they're like, I'm dealing with someone that has a very low vocabulary and bad communication skills. I hope you drove here today by yourself. Like clearly, either you're an asshole or you can't form sentences. And either way, I'm gonna help you out, but there's no manners.
So last weekend I was at Chipotle and I was waiting in line, and there was like 8 people in line, and there was only 2 people behind the counter. Initially, when I walked in there was one person who was making the food and ringing customers out. Eventually, someone came back, and there was 2 of them. And someone who was picking up a to-go order had walked up, and they walked straight up to the register while the person is making the customer's food. The customer who's standing right in front of them, and they're going back and forth. You want beans? What kind of bean? What kind of meat? What kind of sauces? While they're actually working with that customer, this person who came in is like, hey, I want to check on this order. And it's like, do you not see all the other people that they are literally helping now and trying to help? And you think you're the most important person that walked in the door, and like, you can just sit there and just start budging in and ask, like, wait your goddamn turn.
Bobby Hirschman asked, what if you're in the biz and you're at a shop? Going back to the cigar side of things, this is, again, I think this is, you can expand this to a lot of different retail or social environments here. If you're in the biz and at a shop, is it okay to help a customer then asking for a friend? I would say if you have a relationship with the staff and they're extremely busy and they're okay with you jumping in. Yeah. The other thing is to bite the tongue for just a second, let the staff help. And if you want to chime in, not take over the conversation, but if they recommend, for example, like we're smoking tonight, the Blanco Above and Beyond, the featured cigar. If you've had it, you don't have to fluff it up. But if you had it and enjoyed it, and you're not yelling across the shop, but if you're right there, you can, staff says something, you're like, oh, what do you think about this based on what we've talked about? I have no problem with the customer being like, oh, I really like that. So that's a great cigar. Because not only maybe you being honest, hopefully, but also you're giving that credibility to possibly the customer who the staff member is a stranger, you're a stranger, but now they have 2 people saying that, and it's not like they're being set up or being sold, right? I like that kind of involvement from a customer, and then disengage to a point. If the staff member has to then, whatever, you get in a conversation, they sit down, they're smoking a cigar, then you have a conversation, be like, oh, I like that cigar, have you tried this, this, and this? No problem. No problem with that.
So I had something like that recently happen. I dropped Jess off for work, because my wife also works at Carfagna's at the wine table doing wine tastings. And I dropped her off, and rather than going home, waiting for 4 hours and then coming back, I just hung out there, and I was going to go to dinner in the restaurant. And so I was literally hanging out in the corner, which just so happens to be where all the bourbon was. But they have a table back there, and I was literally just hanging out, looking at my phone, and some customers came into that section. And there was 2 of them, and they were talking back and forth to one another. And then they looked at me and started asking me questions. And I straight up said, well, I don't work here, but I do drink a lot of bourbon. Here's things that I like.
I like to drink.
I like to drink whiskey. So I started saying things that I like. And sure enough, these guys ended up buying a couple bottles. The next day is when I had my initial phone call with the director of that department.
It's a bold move, man.
And so one of the guys that works in that department and doing the wine tastings had actually mentioned to his boss about, it's like, yeah, Nate was hanging out there and sold a couple bottles of whiskey. Like, it was great. It was awesome. Like, you should definitely interview this guy. And so in my initial phone call with him, he's like, yeah, I heard you were hanging out in the shop and actually sold a couple bottles. And I was like, wait, I didn't just like jump in and start helping customers. I was literally just standing in the corner. These guys had a conversation, involved me in the conversation, and I made recommendations. I wasn't just walking around the store trying to help customers while not working there. Sure. I intentionally made that clear. Like, I wasn't trying to do his staff's job. I was just hanging out and someone made me involved.
You're defending yourself when they complimented you.
Yes.
Sounds right. That sounds right.
Well, no, he had asked, like, I heard you sold a couple bottles. I didn't know how he was going to take it.
I got it.
Because there are some people, like, you know, someone that used to work at a tinderbox that said that to me. There are some people that might take offense to it. There are some people like, hey, that's awesome. Thanks for helping out.
Sure.
Like, you know, as long as you're not trying to act like you're the staff, that's a different story. Like, if you're trying to act like you work there, and because we've had people at the tinderbox that have engaged customers as soon as they walk in for like 10, 15 minutes in conversation. And we're waiting for the opportunity to be able to help that customer with what they came in for. But they're sitting there talking about their shoes or their glasses or the shirt they're wearing. And we're like, would you just let us do our job and then you guys can bullshit later?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there. Manners in general, like you brought up the you know, do you think do you think that things have gotten better or worse, you know, based on, you know, the last 3 years? What do you think? What do you guys think?
I think when things first opened back up, we kind of saw a decline in that. Like we've talked about before, where there seemed like people lost or forgot how to actually communicate and interact with other people. We've talked about that. You've talked about that, especially in episodes before.
Sure.
Like there was that sense where people forgot how to interact politely in society. I think since things have been reopened long enough, I think it's equalized a little bit more. I think one of the hardest things, though, and I think you'd get this in just about any industry, is every now and then you will get that customer that comes in and they act or think like they know more than you. And that very well could be possible. There very well could be people that come into the tinderbox at Easton that know more about cigars than we do. I mean, we don't know everything. We all have different experiences. We all have different knowledges. But I think when they start sitting there trying to talk and put themselves in a position above you, that's when things can get a little awkward socially.
Sure.
It's even funnier when you have that person that talks like they know more than you, but then they open their mouth and you realize they actually don't have a clue what they're talking about because everything they're saying is wrong. I have seen that happen, and I have to give great credit to the owner of the tinderbox, Brian, because I sat there and watched that happen. Brian has been in the tobacco industry ever since he was a kid, picking tobacco in, you know, his uncle's farm, or whatever. So he's been around tobacco his whole life. He's owned the tinderbox for almost 24 years now, ever since it opened in 99. Mm-hmm. Brian knows a shit ton about tobacco and about cigars. And I watched this customer. Not only was everything he was saying incorrect, also all the pronunciations were wrong as well, which that happens. We don't make fun of customers that mispronounce things. When they come from a place like they're trying to talk from a place of superiority and they do that, now it becomes a little funny. Brian just sat there
Don't-
and agreed with everything the guy was saying.
Okay.
He just let it go, let that guy feel like everything they were saying was absolutely correct, did not try and correct him. Because I think in that situation, if he were to try and correct him on some of those things, that particular person, because the way they were, would actually take offense to it and would have a negative impact.
Sure.
That person probably wouldn't come back. They may not have even bought anything.
Again, manners.
Exactly. Like, all right, I'm not going to correct you.
With
You
business
came
side of it, it's professionalism.
You came in here to buy a cigar. You want to buy a cigar? Cool. What cigar do you want to buy? Whatever it takes to get you to buy a cigar and either hang out and enjoy it or get out, whatever. You know, you have to learn when you're working in a retail, any type of retail business. There are some customers that you just let stuff go. There are some customers where you look at it as an opportunity to educate, not an opportunity to correct,
right,
but a chance to educate. Because I think most customers, if you come across like you're just trying to correct them, they're going to take offense to it. If you come across from like a teacher's mentality that you're just trying to educate them, they are, in most times, they will be grateful that someone is actually trying to help educate them so they have a better understanding and a better knowledge of things.
So Sean Anderson puts it out there based on what you're saying there. Generally speaking, I know more about bourbon and moonshine than most everyone I've encountered in a liquor store, but I will listen to them and thank them for their time, even if I don't pick something they talked about. Again, these are the manners that we're talking about, is that, you know, in Irving says, educate, educate, educate. Customers will appreciate it. Not all customers do. Irving, I understand what you're saying. Not all customers do. And not all people do when you try to educate them in a conversation. It's again, I think it's a lot about listening. And I like that's what Sean says. And Irving, I don't know you personally, I don't believe, but it's like, I think that you're saying the right things, but I hope that you would do the same thing where you do listen. You take a step back and you know how to communicate, because you know, it sounds like, you know, Bobby and a few other people here. I'm not. Yeah, Nate says on the comments here, and I'll put it up there, is that educate versus correct. I mean, this is just, again, this all goes back to manners. It's about respect. It's about conversational skills. And that is, I think, what you were asking about, Nate, with the fact that it's like, how did we come out of all the last few years? I said a lot in those episodes where it was having a conversation versus talking at someone.
Talking with first, yeah.
And I think the talking
absolutely.
at is really where you're talking about there, is that someone comes into an establishment that they don't own. They're a customer there. It's like they come in, they must do that all day long if all they do is talk at people. They don't ask questions. They don't have a conversation. They want to know, they want you to think that they know more than you. And most importantly, they want to think that they know more than you. It doesn't even matter what the audience is. This is how they live their life. And that's, I think, where the manners come in, is that I don't think that it always is something that people are good at, is having proper etiquette or manners. And I'm not talking necessarily about even like proper English anymore. You know, I mean, as far as, you know, whether you're in USA or you're elsewhere, it's just wherever you're at, the way that you utilize the language, it's more of how you utilize situations with the language that you can get more out of it. And therefore the other person hopefully will get more out of it. If all you're doing is talking at people, you are no longer learning anything. In your situation, your scenario, Nate, is that you come into a cigar shop and you look at the selection, and all you want to do is talk about what you smoke, what you like, who you know, name drop this, talk about this experience. It's like, yeah, you know, my not necessarily professional side of it, but in my mind, I'm like, you know, cool, bro. Like, what do you want to smoke? Like, why are you here? Are you here to tell me who you know or what you've done? Like, I'll listen to you. And if you're a good, you know, conversation and you have the other sides of it, I'll probably get a lot out of this conversation and ask questions myself. But if all you're doing is talking at me, I'm not going to shut down. I'm just going to be like, okay, yep.
Just go along with it. Just
more
ride
like,
that wave.
Like, neat. That sounds cool. What are you thinking today? What can I grab you? Do you have any questions? Obviously not. You have a lot of answers. Jonathan says, I met Rocky Patel. Cool. Yeah, great guy. It is funny, those situations you talk like that, Jonathan, where it's like, you know, I met Rocky Patel. I know him. Like, yeah, he's a great guy. Oh, you met him? Yeah, several times. Yeah.
I text him every year on his birthday.
Yeah, great conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Well, I did that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And it's like I think that's the manners on my side of it, is that I'm gonna, like, that's cool, man. I'm not gonna give you like a verbal blowjob. I'm just gonna be like, cool, man. Like, I don't know what you're looking for, but I'm not going home with you. Like, I don't care, but I'm gonna be nice. It's not that I don't care. That comes across as crass. It's more just like that's wonderful, in any situation. It's not just in the cigar side or the retail side, but I mean, it is one of those things where it's just like, that's great. But you don't always have to talk about yourself. I think that's poor manners.
Does it ever like burn your ears, or do you ever notice when a customer comes in and even if they look around for a little bit, they come in and they say, give me this, like, give me 2 of these, give me 2 of these.
No.
Instead of, hey, can I get, or.
Well, you say can, I'm going to correct you, say may you. Yeah.
Oh, really? All right.
I'm not going to correct you.
But no, there are times where a customer will sit there and say, yeah, give me one of these. I'm like, and I won't say anything, but in my mind, I'm like, give me? Like, you?
I don't know. I've given up on the command of the human or the English language a lot of times. It's not even that. People have different ways of saying things. It's more of, if this is your credit card and you're at the counter and it's like, oh yeah, it'll be whatever, $34.25, and they're just like, they throw it down on the counter, because there is a part of me that I'm going to be like, hey, thanks a lot, and I'm like, oh, may I see your ID? Swipe the card, and then they hold out their hand for their card, and I'm just going, and they're going to think I'm rude. And it's like, well, I was following social cues. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You said, fuck you. I said, fuck you back. I thought this was what we do.
Yeah. A lot of times, even if if a customer hands me their card,
I don't know what a verbal blowjob is, but it sounds fantastic. Now, Sean, you guys haven't heard that? Even Sean Anderson. Now there's a turn of phrase I can say I've never used, but y'all know what I meant.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You can use it.
A lot of times, like if a customer even if a customer hands me their card, sometimes they may not necessarily be paying attention after I run it or tap it. But I'll sit there and I'll actually lay it down and almost snap it down on lay it in front of them.
I'll put it on their wallet or whatever they're talking to someone.
I won't necessarily throw it, but
no.
I'll intentionally lay it down on there. I don't I don't just chuck it. Unless it's someone I know and they're on the wrong side of the counter. And I'm like, hey, here you
go. I had no idea that was a new one to some of these guys, especially these guys that are listening.
Such language. Really?
Yeah, it says Bobby Hirschman, who always says,
eat a dick.
Sorry for your virgin ears there, Bobby.
And I'm wondering if that's what Kristen's emoji was for.
I'm sure it was. She tuned in around that time.
You don't buy them a cigar for it?
Oh, sorry, Kristen. Yeah, I think the manners is not said term that these guys are all about. Irving says, first time listening in, and I like the show. All right. Well, we please some people, we don't please everyone. But no, when it goes back to the manners, the way I described this on the post, right? Starting with Cigar Lounge Etiquette, but also, are things changing in our society, or there's some common agreement on what is appropriate manners? That's, I think, the big thing is that, do we have, say in the US, right? And I think you can break it down to states, different regions, obviously different countries. But I mean, I feel as though that, especially in the US, there are agreed upon manners. It's just whether or not you want to follow them, or do you care? Because I think that's the big thing when someone comes in again to a shop, or, I'm just trying to think, we're trying not to keep it all cigar shop, but I mean, obviously we have a lot of cigar shop guys out here. Hey, how you doing today? And, so we sell Black and Milds, and it's just like someone comes in, hey, how you doing today? Black. Excuse me?
Is that your mood?
Yeah, it's just like,
is that the color on your mood ring?
Again, it goes back to the communication side of things. It's form sentences. That's good manners. I think that you should be able to communicate what you want, but I also understand that that's not necessarily what everyone lives on a day-to-day basis. So I will try to joke with people a little bit in a sarcastic way and get them laughing a little bit, or flat out with a smile when they say something I don't like. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means, and they'll explain it. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Let me grab that for you. You know what I'm saying? It's just a matter of how you respond and how you communicate. That's what I think the big manners, the topic of manners. I think that's a big part of it.
Something I hear about on a regular basis. So my mother-in-law works in a department store, and the biggest part of her job is re-racking clothes that have been tried on. And there are some people that will, like, if they try something on and they don't like the way it looks or it doesn't fit right, they will actually walk it back to the rack they got it and put it back on the rack. There are some people that will walk out of the dressing room and there's actually a cart that has hanger, and they'll hang it back on that and then wait for one of the staff members to put it back. And then you have the people that just leave it on the fucking floor of the dressing room.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, great for the person that actually takes the time and effort to go put it back on the rack. Appreciate the person who at least put it, on the cart there for someone to put it back in case they don't know where it goes or something like that. But holy shit, just leaving shit all over the dressing room floor and
what about the
expecting
next person
other people to clean up after you, or the next person that's got to come in and use that dressing room.
You might create a snowball effect there, and then all of a sudden everyone goes into that dressing room, unless you have a staff at a store that all of a sudden there's just everyone's because they think that's what they're supposed to do. Irving says people forgot about manners and live a life of privilege, and it's sad. I think a lot of times it's either a life of privilege or it's a life with a chip on a shoulder. I think it goes a long way. And then there's the small percentage of people that I think they're living a life that they're just truly oblivious. They're ignorant. I mean, they truly don't know, as hard as that is to believe. I think that they just don't fucking know. They think it is normal. The way they were raised when they were in there with their parents, they left like, oh, just leave the clothes. The staff will pick up the clothes in the dressing room, whatever reason that is. But that just continues generation to generation. It's like, now you're mad at me because I was raised that way. And now you're like, oh, what an asshole. He just left his shit there. I'm like, oh, I thought that's what you're supposed to do. That's how that's what I've been doing my whole life. Back to school shopping. Like, I'm not saying my mom did, but I mean, in a situation, like hypothetically, mom's like, oh, no, just leave the clothes there. The staff gets it. No ill will there. No, like they don't mean to be having poor manners. They don't mean to be disrespectful. They just literally like, because a staff member at one point might have even like the core, the origin story of that poor mannered person is literally a staff member was at a old school department store somewhere, and they told their parent, their grandparent, or whatever, just leave whatever you need in the dressing room or what you don't want in the dressing room. We'll get it after you're done. Now all of a sudden you go into like a Kohl's where there's no even employee there, and it's just like they just leave shit everywhere. Kohl's employees look at not Kohl's, but I mean, just like as an example, Kohl's employee like walks in the dressing room like, these fucking assholes just left everything. And it's just a miscommunication.
Well, I can tell you my mother-in-law's experience is sometimes she goes into that dressing room and all she finds is the tags on the floor.
Different story.
Yeah,
that's not manners. That's stealing. That is different. It's different. I'm trying to bring up some of these comments here.
Yeah.
I do like Jonathan Herring, and Sean says, don't bring us back to kindergarten. He says, comes down to this. You're not better than anyone else. And one person is better than you. Treat everyone like you'd want to be treated. The golden rule. I think that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic. The whole phrase I used earlier was still being talked about not too long ago. And I feel like that's in the same realm as like word vomit. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
When you're having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden they just have word vomit. They just like all over you. They just talk. And you're just like, whoa. I don't think that's good manners, because now all you're doing is talking. You're not listening.
When you're trying to dominate the conversation.
You're doing a monologue.
Yeah. I remember one time I was in the car with my mom and stepdad. My stepdad was saying something to me, and then all of a sudden there was a pause. And then I started talking, and right after I started talking, he started talking, and I stopped talking, and I was like, this guy just cut me off. He said his thing.
This guy, your stepdad.
My stepdad. Like
this motherfucker.
My stepdad said his thing. I waited because there was a pause. Then I started talking, and he cuts me off. And I got fired up about that. And so when he's like, you don't have anything to say, I was like, well, you cut me off. Like, I was trying to answer your question,
I think that's fair.
Oh, he laid into me about that. It's like, no, you said this and then paused. I thought you were done talking. Apparently, you decided 5 seconds in between sentences was appropriate. I started talking, and then you cut me off. That's why I'm upset, because you cut me off.
Love that comment from John Gibson there. Best speaker is a better listener.
You have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk.
Sounds like a Sean Anderson quote there.
That was my dad's advice when I went out on my first date.
Teaching you manners right there.
You have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk and show up early. If you're on time, you're late.
If you're not first, you're last. Ricky Bobby.
Well, that could be something different in a relationship, but all right.
Nate's taking it there, right there. All right.
There we go.
Wow. You want to expand upon that, or?
No, I'm just like you. I'm reading through some of these comments.
I think manners is a good conversation to have these days because, again, it's just, again, broken record here. It's about communicating. It truly is about treating others with respect. And I think that's really treating yourself with some respect as well. I think this is something that if you learn something from an interaction or a conversation with someone else, no matter what it is, if you do know more than them about a lot of the topic at hand, you might bring something to the table by listening, and they may ask a question. It's just about, I guess, just decency. It's having decency, to treat others. As Jonathan said, the golden rule, as you'd like to be treated. There's a big aspect of that. Well, that was the whole, we use it kind of jokingly, but when someone tosses a credit card or cash, right? That's the best part, when they throw cash down on the counter or whatever. And it's like, if I do the same thing with coins, it's going to go everywhere. And you're going to be like, what an asshole. And it's like, this is kind of my point with what I'm saying right now. Hand me the money and I'll hand you the money.
I think when it comes to manners, I think things would just go along so much smoother and easier if all parties involved were having good manners. Because if only one party, if one of the 2 parties involved has poor manners, there's some tension in that dynamic, whatever it may be, whether it be retail, whether it be friendships, relationships, professional, there's going to be some tension there if one party has manners, the other party doesn't. If both parties have shit for manners, then it's just a clusterfuck. And everyone's going to take everything out of context and be mad at anything that gets said. When all parties involved actually are taking the time to display good manners, I think it makes things go along a lot smoother. There's less misunderstanding or miscommunication about issues. It just helps whatever that relationship, whether permanent or temporary, might be. It just helps it go along more smoothly.
Do you think we've talked about this on more of the tech side of things a while back? Do you think things like texting has ruined the art of conversation, therefore manners have been lost?
You're talking to someone who multiple times throughout my career in my current, soon to be former employer,
okay,
where I have said things either in an email or through a Teams chat that the person on the receiving end of that, because they're dealing with their own shit and their own negativity, they impart that negativity onto what I said, even though I didn't mean it that way.
Okay.
And they then come at me why are they saying this like this? They're being a dick about this. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, this is why I said what I said. This is the meaning behind it. I'm not trying to be rude or anything at all. I'm just stating this. Like, the very first time I was taking time off from my current position, and I was told, email the team to get coverage. Come to find out, whoever trained you on something is who your backup is. I didn't know that. So I had sent out an email like, hey, I need coverage on this, this, and this because I'm going to be out. And then someone messages me and says, and it's on the group email. They replied all and says, no, whoever trained you is supposed to be backing you up. And, or someone sent that to me in a message. And then someone else in an email said kind of the same thing. And I was like, sorry about that. I didn't realize that was the case until after, and I put all caps, the word after.
It's funny.
And it was just to highlight, like, yes, I didn't know this before I'd asked someone for coverage. Now I know otherwise. I didn't know that until afterwards. There were people on my team that, because I capitalized just the word after, thought I was yelling at that person.
Did you read Jonathan's comment there?
No.
On the screen.
My wife's aunt had to go talk to HR because she used all. Yes. So
that was before you told the story, just so you know.
So a few hours later, my manager calls me because someone else got offended. Not even the person that I was replying to with after in all caps. Somebody else was offended on their behalf. Fuck off.
You gotta, Did you email that in all caps or just like in lowercase?
Yep. No.
Fuck off.
No. Because that wasn't the first time that had happened.
If you did text back fuck off, do you think that fuck off in all caps, like you were yelling, is more offensive, or just the subtle fuck off all lowercase? Do you think which would come across more aggressive?
Which one would get me fired first?
Well, I shouldn't do it at work. I'm just saying in general. Let's take a step back. But if you do text someone fuck off when they like made a point, you said fuck off, and you just like,
oh, I think all caps is probably going to be taken worse.
See, I think the subtleness of the lowercase,
well, that could be
would be kind of like this, even less engagement. It's just like, fuck off.
Yeah, well, I think that's the difference. Like,
it's like you didn't bother me that much, but fuck off.
Yeah, if you said something
like fuck off and like you were like all caps, it's like, oh, I got this person going. You do a lowercase, that's a power move, I think.
Oh, no. I think the caps is worse. All right. Like if you said something to me
Kristen
and I
says caps.
Yeah, if you
Jonathan says hashtag Team Steve. Love it.
If you had
subtle, absolutely.
If you said something to me and I softly muttered, fuck off. Like, you're not going to take that much offense to it. If you say something that pisses me off, I'm like, you know what? Fuck off. You're obviously going to pick up a lot more anger in that one.
Yeah, but
that's what I think gets lost.
Texting, I think subtleness or just taking a step back. Like if you say something and you're expecting emotion and there's no response, again, power move. It's like the same thing with texting, not to get out, but manners. So, I feel like we're spiraling on it a little bit. It was the whole, like, if you wrote back when someone asks you a question or says something, you wrote lowercase K.
Oh,
right? When did that become? It used to be like
whether it's
like an acknowledgement. Now you can do a thumbs up or like even like thumbs up that message.
Oh, I have a
coworker. Like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. If you wrote K, you're like, oh, what does that mean?
I actually have a coworker on my current team who actually is offended when she'll message me something and I do the thumbs up reply. She gets offended to that.
What color is the thumbs up?
There's only one option. It's yellow. That's the only option we have on Microsoft Teams. It's not
Rightfully
like
so Simpson style.
But no, and I was like, is this person a fucking millennial or like what? No, they're 3 years younger than I am. It's like,
you're not a
well, they are a millennial, but they're not in their 20s. Like, holy shit, you get offended when I say thumbs. And Jonathan Herring with the dark thumbs up.
Easy. I like it. This morning I was brushing off Kristen's car, my girlfriend's car, in the driveway. It had snow on it or whatever, so I was brushing it off before she got out there.
Good for you.
Well, but
did she tell you to fuck off after you did that?
No, but
okay.
Matt, my neighbor across the street, was pulling. He was in his truck and he was pulling around the cul-de-sac, and he stops and he's like, "Oh, look at you, boyfriend of the year!" And my response was, "Go fuck yourself." It's like
but you guys are friends.
7-something in the morning.
But you guys are friends. You can joke, guys. When they're friends like that, we can joke around. And like Bobby Hirschman, he's just there and says, "Eat a dick." No one who Bobby Hirschman says that to takes offense to that whatsoever.
The only people that take offense to it are people that are around him when he says that to the people.
They take offense on behalf of the other people.
Which is the way of the world today.
Yes, it is. But no, I mean, no, there have been too many issues I've had with work because of emails and Teams or text or whatever, where someone interprets something incorrectly because of whatever's going on in their day. If they're having a bad day, they're going to impart a negative connotation to whatever it is you said, whether you meant it or not.
No, I think we've gone too far on this here a little bit with the manners. The reason I asked that about the texting and all that stuff. Jesus, what is this conversation going on here? Jonathan, Kristen, jeez. Wow. Oh, she used the term. Yeah. That's the term that I came up with. Walk of pride as opposed to walk of shame. When you're happy about the relationship, it's a walk of pride. I think that so when we first went to the email thing with this manners thing that we're talking about, and I don't want to keep this. I mean, we're doing all right on time here, but appreciate the audience participation. This is exactly what I was looking for on this part, because I didn't know where we were going to go with this. But I think when you started doing more email, right? You went from conversation and on the phone. So again, you still have a conversation, right? It's a verbal conversation. You may not be in the same place, but you're using a phone line, which was fantastic. And then it was, you either wrote a letter and then email came along. And it was great that you had that, because people were still writing incomplete sentences. There was, like a hello, Nate, just even Nate, comma, and then it was the body of the paragraph, and then there was maybe it was a full blown 5-paragraph, whatever it is, but like
intro,
it
points,
was, and there's like a little bit of
conclusion.
niceties. You don't need the niceties all the time. It's like, hey, I hope all is well. I still do that shit when I send in hours for the shop. When I email our accountant, Randy, here are the hours for this week. Boom, 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 boom. Hope all is well. And then I have my signature at the bottom that comes up automatically.
Yeah,
I don't need
friendly
to do that, because if all I did was email him and it was literally just like Nate Hale, this many hours, Steve, it's like I just did that and then just hit send, same thing would come across. And he may not think anything of it, but it's just like, I do a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that email there where it's like there are the responses. It's like, if you sent something out to your team, there used to be something that was at the end of it, NRN.
Not right now.
No response necessary.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, I'm not looking for anything. I'm just putting information out there or asking something. And there was this thing that was like before texting. I don't know if it was part of instant messenger, but there were some abbreviations that started showing their heads. NRN, no reply necessary. And then it's like, I'm not looking for it, so that when we have our one-on-one or whatever, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you never responded. It's like, well, you said no reply necessary, so I just went and did it. So there was a little bit of this bridge there. Now it's just short sentences or just even phrases. Or again, I think I would venture to say that one of the bottoming out, hitting rock bottom in messaging and communicating was what I brought up earlier, was K. Because that was the one where it's like Nate messages me something. Hey, I'm going to be over there. I'm going to be over the house for the podcast tonight. Run a little bit late. Okay. There was a time, and again, if you're not like dating or anything like that, but there was a time where it's like a lot of people will look at it and be like, oh, cool. Like that's like a thumbs up. That's like you could have said, I'm going to be late. Sorry. No reply necessary. I'm on my way. But if I wrote back K, there was a turning point in our society today that meant like, shit, he's mad at me.
Yeah.
That's I think where some of the manners have been lost, is that you do this stuff and it's like all of a sudden people start thinking like, oh man, what?
Which is worse.
If I could have wrote back, be like, hey man, be safe, totally understand, not a problem. Okay, see you when you get here. Which there's nothing wrong with writing back like that. Not saying he does this. He's always, he's always on time or early, like you said. But it's like I'm using this as an example. If I wrote back K and you're like, fuck, I gotta hurry. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like even if you're like, so if you text your boss, because that's what you do anymore. You text your boss. You don't even call in, right? Hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm not going to be in. I'm going to use a personal day. And you could easily, they'd write back, hey, I hope you feel better. Take the day. We'll take care of your shit, whatever. You know what I mean? And you're going to be like, oh, good. He or she is happy. They write back K.
And you're like, fuck.
God damn it. Caught them at a bad time. They're probably pissed. They don't want this. They didn't want to hear this. They're having a bad morning.
I gotta show up to work sick.
Then you show up and you're like, I said okay. Like I said, that's not a problem. Like you said K.
Yeah. I think it depends. I think it depends on the relationship. If I was running late,
who's got the language, Bobby?
If I was running late for showing up to the podcast and you said K, all right, we're cool.
Yeah.
I think if you were displaying an issue and all you said, or let's say I was texting you about a problem that you and I were having, and you just said back K, like, all right, this motherfucker's
drunk.
Well,
depending on what time.
But let me ask you, which is worse when it comes to messaging? When someone responds back K, or it just is on scene? They don't respond, but you can tell that they at least saw it.
Depends on the situation. If they saw it, and it depends on my message. If I was looking for a response and it's seen, I think that's a dick move. And I just...
You and I actually had that instance happen last year.
Yeah.
You had texted me something.
Oh, here we go. We're airing laundry here. Let's go.
No. You had texted me.
Did you see this whole conversation going on about
K? Holy shit.
Love it.
But no, you had texted me something. I read it, and the way I am, I didn't want to respond out of emotion. I wanted to actually collect my thoughts and then provide a response.
Yeah.
You actually then said something to me a couple days later because I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Because you saw that I had seen the message but didn't respond to it, you took that as a negative. But then when you and I were having a conversation face to face, I said, no, I wasn't ignoring you. I wasn't not replying. I was trying to formulate a response because I did not want to respond from a place of emotion. I wanted to respond from a place of clarity and understanding.
So I look at that as, with the topic tonight, manners. Yes, I do remember that situation. And I would say what I was looking for. And I think that in that situation, and I expressed this when I brought it up again, when I brought up the conversation, was that, yeah, you could have, even if you were, because we're not going to get into what it was about, but it was like, it could have been, hey, give me a sec, I'll respond.
That's kind of like exactly what Kristen said.
I need to, exactly what you said. I need to gather my thoughts. Give me a day.
And it probably would have been taken better if I...
When I was doing, you talk about manners as professionalism. When I was doing, my sole position for a period of time was handling damage claims at a moving company. And if you leave me a voicemail as the claims manager at a moving company that the crew had damaged something, you leave me a voicemail and I don't even call you back with just no response, they get pissed. If you call back and say, hey, I'm working on it, give me about another 24, 48 hours, I'll get back to you. Even if I don't have an answer, I'm going to get back to you just to touch base so that you know that I'm still working on it. You do that enough, you're blowing it off. But if you just communicate that, and I think that's professionalism / manners, there's something there that it's like, if there is something being asked, or it's a somewhat of a sensitive thing, or even just something, any response, just a response. So I think that, yes, I think that just leaving it on scene is is, and it's not just directed to you, but I'm saying I think it's a level of disrespect, and it's not good manners in the conversation, the art of conversation. I think that there should be something more than, because I think the whole red receipts, it can be a power move, but no one's really benefiting from that because it just makes the situation worse. It's like if I'm talking to you, and I know you were doing something else, but it's like kind of it's like if I'm talking to you,
it was podcast related.
It doesn't. This happens. There's someone in the shop, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's someone in the shop that'll listen to the podcast. You'll be talking to them. You're having a conversation. They're looking up at like Sports Center or something like that, and you just like literally like we're like in mid conversation. You're talking. You're like, yeah. So then I did this. Like, what'd you do last night? Oh, I did this. I had a great time and all that stuff. And you're looking at them. They're looking up at the TV, and they're like, oh my god, did you see that? No, because I was talking to you.
I just stopped talking.
You know what I'm saying?
I wait for them to.
That's the same kind of thing.
I wait for them to re-engage eye contact.
Texting with the scene thing. It's like, it's you said something, they received it, they did it, and there's no response. I'm just saying, I think that good manners would be some form of communication.
I think having conversations.
Jonathan, I get that, but most men are too stupid for that kind of response. Some good points going on out here.
No, as great as some of the advancements in technology have been, I think with the ability to text, we've lost some of the manners. We've lost some communication skills. I think when you have a conversation face to face, it's much more difficult to misinterpret the tone, the meaning, or the intent behind what that other party is saying.
Sure.
And so some people, and I get it, some people, if you don't respond to a text right away, but you read it, some people are, I get that some people are upset because they think you're ignoring them or just blowing them off. But I think there's also something to be said where if it's truly an important issue, like wait to have that conversation face to face. Bring it up in person. Don't blindside the person with a text message.
True.
Like if it's something truly important that needs to be discussed, don't blindside them when you're not together, because that's, I think, a power move, because it's going to be difficult for that person to have a genuine, honest conversation through text and everything get interpreted and taken the correct way.
Do you ever call someone and they pick up and you say like, hey, do you have a second? Is this a good time? Or do you just assume they're able to talk?
If I actually just out of the blue call someone,
do you call people?
Rarely, but
See,
yes.
I think that's a comment. I mean, I think it's a comment on what we're talking about too.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I waited until Sunday to break the news to someone about me leaving my current employer and taking another job. I didn't want that to be a text message thing. I didn't necessarily want it to be
that's fair, a
phone call thing. I wanted to actually give that person, like, let them know face to face, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Unfortunately, again, that person was not happy with my decision. The last time I left a career I was at for 8 years, that person was not happy with me leaving that career to do something that I wanted to do.
You've told the story several times. We all know what you're talking about.
I have. Same thing happened on Sunday. I told that person, like, because they had asked me how work's going. I was like, well, I actually am going to be putting in my 2 weeks notice tomorrow and I'm leaving. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, what are you going to be doing? Oh, I'm going to be doing this. And like, I was really excited. And they're like, did you actually think this through?
Yeah, well.
And I'm like, seriously? Like,
know your audience, though.
I know.
You had to expect that.
Just once. I would love to be able to tell that person that I'm going to be doing something that I have a passion for, something I'm excited for, something I really want to do, and that person be genuinely happy for me.
If you're really good at, like, say, dancing or singing, you told that person
That's a stretch, but okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying. If you said that, yeah, I got a gig on Broadway, quit my job, I'm gonna do a show on Broadway. What do you think the response would be? Similar, or do you think it's just got to be a certain level of excellence?
It's absolutely going to be a similar response.
Okay, so I think that's fair. And Jonathan says your wife. I'm going to answer.
No,
yeah,
it's my dad.
Oh.
So for those who may not have heard this story before, almost 9.5 years ago, I was driving up to Chicago for an interview with a cigar company. And as I'm driving up to Chicago, I get a phone call from my dad. He's like, "Hey, what are you up to?" I'm like, "Well, I'm driving to Chicago." "What are you doing in Chicago?" I got an interview." "It's not for the cigar job, is it?" I was like, "Actually, yeah, it is." And he says, and I quote, "I hope it goes well, but not too well."
See, we've heard this story.
I know. But it wasn't until months later when I was doing an event local and my dad showed up, he actually saw how passionate and how much I enjoyed doing that job. And I think my dad's kind of has the same feelings right now with me taking on this new venture, because, and I don't necessarily blame my dad for having that mindset, because my dad started working for UPS when he was 18. He retired from there at the age of 55. That's that
solid career.
Yeah. It put a roof over his head, fed his family, did all that stuff. But that's kind of what some of the older generations did, is they got a job that became a career. They stuck with it until they retired or died. Nowadays, younger people sit there and they leave careers chasing the next opportunity every single time.
I don't think that's what you're doing.
No, I'm not leaving my current employer just to seek out the next best thing. Things aren't going well. They haven't been going well for a long time. My dad knows that. But
he'd rather have you have security.
But there's no such thing as job security. It's a myth. They can fire you for any fucking reason they want to, especially in the state of Ohio. It's an at-will state. They can fire you for whatever.
On his side, I feel like it is that.
He thinks I should stay with the company I currently work for because it's a big company.
Yep.
Just like the last, big company I worked for. And he doesn't necessarily understand just how bad things are. And I have the opportunity to do something I want to do. My dad will be the first to admit he did not want to drive a UPS delivery truck for 30 fucking years, but it paid, for his roof, for his house, for all that stuff. Yes, Jonathan, my language is getting this way because I am getting emotional. It happens.
Let's go. Manners.
But it's twice now that I've been really passionate and, excited for a new venture and a new opportunity and someone who actually has faith in me to do a good job. And then I tell that person and they kind of shit on it. It kind of makes me not want to tell them when I'm making another change.
Or you keep in touch with said person and you talk to him regularly about that. This is not as much with manners, but it's hopefully, where this conversation is going is hopefully you can continue to bounce it off. It's not just proving them wrong. It's not just that, because that is a classic type of scenarios that I'll show them. No, it's you did things the right way. You were taught correctly. You put in your 2 weeks. You talked to your current employer, and it's there should be no ill will. You're taking an opportunity to do something that you think that can compensate you as good or better as time goes on, and it's something that you're passionate about. This is not a 20-year career plan necessarily. This is a now to the next hopefully 10 years and see where it goes. You know what I mean? But you have a good resume. You're still doing it. This fizzles out, you've got a good resume. You can get another job doing similar things that you were doing. You know what I mean? And likely if you leave correctly, you can go back. And those are the conversations to have. Is like, no, I want to give myself a chance, and I'm making sure I fought for the right compensation. I know that while I'm working in this new field, that I'm not like taking a huge pay cut. I'm not like cutting, like I'm not taking a huge gamble here. The only gamble is the fear of the unknown. And you and I have talked about that with a lot of things. But yeah, I don't want, that's not necessarily the topic that we have tonight, but it is very important. I appreciate you getting emotional and being honest about that, because that's a tough one.
But
you don't want to let people down. And when you're excited about something and you try to convey that to someone else, that's important to you, and they don't see that.
But do you think that could be related to this topic of manners? Like, I mean, like
when it comes to family,
should that person be happy for me, or should they?
I think he is.
If he is, he hasn't expressed it. Now, Grant, you and I are coworkers and we're friends. If you came up to me tonight and said, "Hey, I'm going to be leaving the tinderbox and I'm going to be doing something else that I'm even more passionate about," I'm going to sit there and say, "Dude, I hope it's the right call. I wish you the best of luck. And, if anything comes up, like, let me know. I'll be there to help you out as best I can. I'm going to be excited for you. Like, all right, you're doing what you believe is best for you and yours. I want to be as excited for you as you are for you."
Yes, and I'm that way, but I'm also like a little bit of a hybrid there, because remember when you were talking to me last week about this, I started because of because the other job thing. It was like, well, now all of a sudden, like, this is affecting my job and my. So I was like, hey, let's talk about this part of it. You know what I mean? But then, yeah, I mean, I sometimes will not only like support a friend or a loved one or whatever it might be. But I'm more of not just like, hope you know what you're doing. No, it's like, hey, okay, did you think about this? Did you talk to him about this? You know what I mean? Because I was saying, like, well, if you do a part-time job, if that cuts into your hours, so big time picture compensation, is it compensating for that part-time because they're taking away certain hour? Like, I'm looking at it like, no, I think that's great, but like, are you looking at all this stuff? And you can easily be like, shut the fuck up, or you're like, yeah, I have, or my intent is that you say, yes, you have, but the goal there is if there is something that you bring up in a conversation again, if you were like, yeah, I do, I'm quitting my job, I have nothing to do, I'm like, let's talk. If you say I'm taking this opportunity, like, it's like, all right, well, how do you feel about it? And like, it's again, I go back. There's so many things, relationships and career wise, it's just purely about having a conversation. It's talking it through and being open about what you're talking through.
But I think, as we've talked about, that is so much easier to do face to face rather than through text message or through email.
Yeah. Going back to what you asked earlier, or you brought up earlier, it doesn't mean you don't respond. Whether it be, because I've had those,
and I learned that when you and I had
those face-to-face conversations where you're talking and it gets to that point where you're like, are you going to say something? You know what I mean? Like, you can do it in person too. We're having that conversation. Manners or otherwise are even more important. It's just emotion at that point. Is that if you just don't respond and you don't even say like, I need a second to think, and I need to like, kind of digest what you're saying. If you just sit there with a blank stare in your face and you don't say anything, that's not good. You got to respond. You got to have that. And manners are just respect. You got to put something else out there.
Well, and yes, when you're having that conversation face to face, it's best, even if you do need time to think about it. Yes, it is best to let that person know, like, well, let me think on that. I get that. I think the other party also needs to be respectful. If you need time to think about it, they need to give you time to think about it and actually formulate a response.
Sure.
Instead of sitting there going, "Oh, you need time to think about it." 5, 4,
well, that's a
3.
Dick move. Whatever. Like, that's not cool.
Like actually even if that means that you go your separate ways at that particular moment, you both leave and you go home to think about things, you can reconvene later.
Sure.
Because I've seen it with other people where two parties would come together right in front of me and they're talking about an issue and they're literally just going back and forth off of emotion, and it makes things worse because one person comes back with emotion and they ratchet the conversation up a little bit. The next person comes back with even more emotion, and it just keeps leapfrogging each other until both parties are just boiling over and want to scream at each other.
Gasoline on fire.
Yeah. And it's like, just like, hey guys, like, let's take a second. All right. Bless you. Get that under control. Holy shit.
It's out of control. It's out of control.
But no,
call the show.
Hey guys, let's bring things back down a notch. You guys are both getting elevated. Let's take things down. Remember what it is we're trying to discuss. All we need to do is have a discussion about things. We don't need to yell at each other because we're literally sitting at the same table for one another. We don't need to yell. We can have a conversation and get things accomplished. You can get more things accomplished sitting at the table just talking back and forth than you will yelling back and forth at the table. And it's even more awkward when you're the third wheel in that conversation. Like you're just hanging out watching two people go at each other. And you're like, I don't know if I should jump in here or not because I don't want to get my head ripped off.
I asked the audience if they had any closing comments here. So I was going to give them just a moment. I feel like we're going to not get anything from them, but I hope we do. No, I get what you're saying about, talking to your dad about that. I mean, obviously, we've spoke about my father in the past, and I think this is something that your dad, knowing he wants the best for you, and stability is the biggest thing, and making sure you're okay. That they don't want to see you fail, but hopefully they do want to see you follow your passion to a point, as long as you do it in a smart way. And that's again where I go back to the conversation of it all.
Well, yeah, it would be a stupid idea for me at 39 years old to sit there and say, you know what, I'm passionate about baseball. I'm going to go try and be a professional baseball player. Bad idea.
Well, you got to stretch first.
I'm not Randy Quaid in The Rookie. Probably a bad idea.
Dennis Quaid.
Sorry. Randy Quaid's little.
He wouldn't have pulled that part off.
Yeah, no, God, no.
Great movie, by the way. I love that movie.
Yeah. And it
gives me hope.
The first time you watched it, did you know the story of that character?
I mean, I saw the trailer.
No, so I knew that person went on to have a brief career because they were older. I knew they went on to have a brief career in Major League Baseball, but still in the movie, the first time he comes out making his Major League debut, because of the way it builds it up, you're almost waiting for him to blow his elbow out on the first pitch.
Spoiler alert.
Like that's what that movie's been out for over a decade. Like no spoiler alert. Fuck off.
I don't remember that part of it.
But no, like I remember watching it when he was making his Major League debut. You're like, oh shit, I hope he doesn't blow his elbow out on his first pitch. But it's like, no, like the story. I know it doesn't happen, but it's like, I hope it doesn't. Yeah.
Jonathan Aaron says, what I've learned tonight, I'm going to go back to college to play UGA football. I don't know what eligibility you have left, but that'd be fine. Closing.
He'd probably still be younger than their current quarterback.
That's I think he's moving on. Closing remarks from the audience here. We got a couple people here. Jonathan. Manners are treating folks the way you'd like to be treated. Pretend that it's you working in service or customer care. Treat people well all the time. I think that's great. That's great. Great closing remarks, and that is way under, as they like to gauge us. Sean says on the feed here, Yeah, closing thought. Be nice, be respectful until someone shows you that they don't deserve that kind of treatment. Should always start that way.
I agree with that to an extent. It depends on the situation you're in. If you are working in a retail establishment, like your job is to provide a customer service.
I think he's talking a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's talking more personal. But like in a customer service standpoint, if a customer is being rude or disrespectful, that doesn't mean be rude and disrespectful back to them, because then that could be jeopardizing your position.
I think you got to know your role in the organization if you're doing it professionally.
If you're the owner of the business,
yeah,
you can say whatever you want. But if you're an employee of the business, like
you got to know that people have your back and you're doing it in a tactful way, or you're doing it in a professional way, or at least in a comedy way. You don't get walked over. There were a couple times, just two situations. One, I was handling a claim back at said job I was talking about at a moving company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a broken TV. They had picked the minimal coverage, which was basically 60 cents per pound, right? And I was speaking with the customer, was a woman. And I explained, well, like unfortunately the TV was damaged. The model is worth X. This is back in the day before, like, the flat screens for $300 and, whatever. But it was like a nicer TV, bigger TV. And I think they paid well over $1,000 for it. You know what I mean? And I said, well, the current model is worth, the current model of that one is like, say, $800, for example, right?
Okay.
And if you would have picked depreciated value, you would have gotten like, say, $400. Minimal coverage is going to get you basically $120. So out of goodwill, we're going to give you, $250, try to like put towards a new TV. That was all way beyond the legal obligation of that.
Yeah.
Then the boyfriend calls.
No.
And I remember because I was at home that day and, that evening, and he was calling. I picked up on my cell phone, and sure enough, it's like, got to the conversation. He's like, said something like, he called you a piece of shit, or like, you're a pussy or whatever. And I said, well, you can continue talking to me like an adult, or we can end this conversation now. And he started like cursing, like, cussing up a storm. Literally just hung up on him.
Oh, yeah.
Called back, and I picked up. He's like, are you ready to talk like an adult? That's exactly the words I said to him. He got pissed off again. He's like, I'm going to fucking talk to you. I hung up again. Called me back.
That's straight out of a sitcom.
Called me back, and I picked up. He's like, are you ready to work this through? Never had work through it, right? The guy actually knew he was in the wrong. I mean, I didn't reach his level, right? Basically did that. More recently, had a customer come in, and he was looking whatever the cigar that was on for sale, whatever. And again, he's like, oh, yeah, I was looking for that. It's like, oh, actually, we just sold out of that earlier today. Like, we'll have a new special tomorrow. And he's like, oh, well, then you'll just give me any of these cigars in here at, 30% off. And I'm like, well, no, I can't do that. And he's like, well, why not? That's the way you should do it. I was like, well, obviously you don't, have
you don't own a business.
You must not run a business, because that's just poor business. And he just was like, looked at me, looked at a couple cigars, walked out, came back in a week, 2-3 weeks later, comes in, hey, how you doing today? Is there anything I can help you with? And I recognized him.
I know who you're talking about.
And he said, oh, you must not remember, but you insulted me the last time I was in.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't think that happened. Like, what happened? He's like, well, you said I don't know business. And I was like, oh, no, you actually said I should give you every cigar in here, or any cigar in here, for 30% off. That's not how specials work. I said, I'd be happy to help you out. We look at today's special. He ended up buying cigars. He was in last night again. This is well over a year later. And now he's super friendly. It's like one of those things. It's like, yes, I probably shouldn't have said it, but I said it in a way that it's like, you can complain all you want, but what the facts are, I probably shouldn't have said what I said. But at the same time, I was like, well, no, I'm not going to give you anything on the menu. Since we ran out of special, it doesn't mean that everything's on special. So it's one of those things. I spoke to that person, and obviously you do it in a certain way with a certain tone, a certain level of manners, and jokingly. I could have easily gone back and like, well, I was obviously joking. I thought you were joking with me. Sorry, you took it the wrong way. I didn't insult you. I didn't do anything like that.
Well, then that were right there, he'd probably take as an insult, because you're calling him out like, oh, you took it the wrong way. He'd probably be offended by that.
Bottom line is, he came in last night, and he and his girlfriend had a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think when it comes to manners, like, I think it's something that nowadays gets overlooked a little bit, because I think too many people either talk from a place of emotion or they talk from a place of superiority, especially in retail where they think like you work for them or you owe them something, and they don't realize that it's a mutually beneficial situation. Like, I'm here to help you, help me help you. Quote Jerry Maguire. Uh,
Hashtag.
like my role in this is to help you get what it is you're looking for. Like the new role I'm getting ready to start in a couple weeks. My job is going to be, if someone comes into the store and they're looking for uh, a bottle of wine to go with steak and wine Sunday, my job is to give them recommendations as to the best thing that can fit what it is they're looking for. Something that's going to pair with their meal, be within their budget, provide some sort of knowledge or education the best I can or any of the other staff can provide. That's the job. And I think if people approach it, even from a customer standpoint, if they approach the situation with a level of manners and a level of mutual respect, like, both parties can make out, both parties can win. It's not a win-lose. It should always go into the situation looking for the win-win. And if people come across with the wrong attitude or the wrong mentality, it can detract from that, and it may turn it into a win-lose situation. But a lot of times when you take a win-win and you may think you're trying to turn it into a win-lose, it ends up being a lose-lose situation. Both parties don't get what they want. Either that person gets a bad product or that person never comes back. Both parties don't benefit from that whatsoever. So I get what Sean Anderson was saying in terms of like personal relationships or friendships or stuff like that, or just random strangers. I think it's a little bit different when it's involving your work. I think if a customer comes in and they don't display proper or good manners, don't take it personally, because chances are that person's got something else going on and they're taking it out on you. It's not because of you. It's not about you. You just happen to be the next person they talk to. Let it go, and and focus on the next opportunity, the next customer, the next engagement. Don't let that one drag you down. Focus on the next one. But if you actually come across from a position of proper manners, both parties actually go away in a better attitude, in a better mood. If a customer comes in with a great attitude and the person working provides a great service, the customer is going to walk away going, man, I'm really glad I came in today. I'm really glad I asked the questions I did. I'm also really thankful that other person asked the questions that they did, because now I feel confident in what I've purchased. And then the person working is also going to have the same attitude. I'm glad that person asked questions. I'm glad they allowed me to ask questions and they answered that questions. I feel confident and I feel good that I did my job and provided what that customer was looking for. I think it's easier to do when both parties are coming from a position of proper manners rather than being rude or disrespectful.
Yeah.
Even if something's going on shitty in your life, it's easier said than done. Flip a switch, turn off all the shit that went on before, focus in the now, and be polite and respectful to that other party, because that other party is going to reciprocate that back. And it may then, whether it was intended or not, when that other party is respectful back, maybe then that makes you go away from that interaction with a better attitude, a better mindset. Maybe it puts you in a little bit better mood and makes you forget about all the shit that happened leading up to it.
Respond to this. Sean says, yeah, but if you let them do that, but if you let them, they will just do that all the time. Someone has to point out that they're stepping
on their dick.
Stepping on their dick. And I may not be the only one, but I'm one of the guys to point out that they are testing the limits of peaceful human interactions.
I'm not saying let people walk all over you. There, at some point, you have to be able to stand up for yourself and stand up to your coworkers, your staff. If someone came into the store, let's say it's at the tinderbox. If someone came in the store and was just ripping on one of the other employees there, like, oh, you recommended this cigar, and it was an absolutely terrible cigar. It's like, what was it you were asking for? Because they may have actually recommended something that, based on the questions asked or what you said, was what they thought best suited. Like, if you didn't give enough information, or like, maybe they're not in the wrong. Maybe you're just the asshole because you didn't actually go through and explain what it is you were looking for.
So I'll comment on Sean's and what you were just saying there is that, Sean, you're absolutely right. In my opinion, someone has to be the one. It doesn't always have to be you. But to Nate's point, sometimes you have an interaction with someone. It's your first interaction. It could be a bad day. It could be a bad morning. They don't always do that. So there's a bit of a tact there of how you respond. And I think it is something, one of the things, and I'm not, it's never superficial. When someone expresses frustration in their interaction with me, whether it be professional, friendship, relationships, one of the things I've learned is this is not an exercise. This is true. This is very genuine. There is a level of, and I think it comes across superficial or very, very fake from a stranger. But it's, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, why do you feel that way? Like, this is my side of things. This is, it was not intentional for you to walk away from a previous experience or even the current situation for you to feel that way. Especially if it's true. That's not what was intended. You had a bad cigar, you had a bad experience at a restaurant, whatever it might be. You have a argument, or someone doesn't, like, they think that you aren't putting, like if Nate and I, he brought that interaction we had, it was like we had different perspectives. I'm the type of person that I want to communicate and work through it, where other people sometimes need more of a moment. I'm not saying I'm not speaking from emotion, but it's not always my place to correct, especially a complete stranger. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just going to be like, so why? Yeah. Like, let's walk through it. Not everyone wants to communicate like that. not everyone. They just want to be mad. I saw, it was funny. Like, I think it was a Instagram reel or a TikTok, and it was this lady walks into a grocery store, like it was a meat counter or whatever, or cheese, right? So it was like that counter at the grocery store, and she walks in and she's like, this block of cheese, I bought it from here and it had a hair in it. The person behind the counter is like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. Let me just and this lady walked in fuming. It was scripted, right? But she was fuming, right? And the lady behind the counter is like, I'm so sorry about that. Let me take that back. Here's a voucher. Here's a coupon. The next purchase is on us and all that stuff. And the lady just stares at her. I watched this today. Oddly enough, we were talking about this tonight.
It's funny how some things work out.
Sometimes, yeah, right. I forget. It's just, it happened to pop up, and I'm watching this, and I was like, oh, here we go. Like, I'm thinking customer service. And so the lady behind the counter, she's like, is there anything else I can do for you? And the lady looks at her with coupons and like voucher, like completely reimbursed. No arguments, just like, I'm so sorry, here you go. Hopefully. And the lady looks at her. I was really ready to let you have it. She's like, did you want to let me have it? Like, would that make you feel better? And the lady's like, yes, it really would. And so the lady behind the counter is like, do you have a receipt for that? And she's like, no, I don't have a receipt. I don't keep a receipt. And she's like, well, I don't know if I can do anything. And like, just completely like role played the whole shit, like all this stuff, you know what I mean? And at the end of it, she's like, well, I don't think I can do anything for you, but you know what? We completely apologize. Let me see if I can, I forget what she said, like, let me see if I can see a manager and all this stuff, hang on 1 second. At the end of it, she's like, did that make you feel better? She's like, yes, it did. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. It's like one of those things. It's like, sometimes people just want to vent. You know what I mean? They want to, like, they're angry about, like, they walk in all fucking fired up, and they leave the manners at the door, and then they're treated with kindness, or this conversation of like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, what can I do for you? You're like, you're not supposed to respond like that. You're supposed to say no to me, and I'm going to fight you. I had this whole thing as I drove over here. I was ready to do this and all this shit. And then all of a sudden, it was a great skit, because the lady's just like, oh, yeah, like, here you go. I'm so sorry. Here's this. And then I tell you what, here's a coupon for, even more. And there's like,
your manners threw me off.
It was a great thing. I wish I would have saved it, because I would have sent it. I would have sent it to you, and it
kind of reminds me when we started the part 2 and we were talking about cigar shop etiquette, and Jonathan Herring was being sarcastic about talking about religion or politics. It reminds me, I've seen it multiple times in the cigar shops where you'll have several people who are all similar mindsets about an issue, and then you have that one person that's on the other side. And so, like, everyone kind of gangs up on that one person. And then that one person's like, yeah, screw you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be back.
Yeah.
And they come back and hang out with the same group of guys. They leave and they let it go. They come back the next day because they know it's not personal. It's just, everyone has different opinions, different beliefs. You just let it go sometimes. And it's easier said than done. Some issues, it's easier. Some issues, it's more difficult to do so. But I mean, at the end of the day, God damn it. I said it. Shit.
It's on you, man. No,
but just approach the situation from a level of mutual respect. If the other party doesn't reciprocate that respect, fine. Try and have, unless it actually is personal, like unless they're actually calling you out and saying things directly about you and making it personal, chances are it's actually not personal. They're just pissed off. They're in a bad mood. Don't take it personal. Don't give in and react to whatever negative energy they're throwing back at you.
I'll bring it back to something similar that was actually more of a real life thing, and then I'll give my quick closing remarks here. I guess you say over under whatever, but we had Nish Patel at one of the Smoking Tent events, and I found this. Someone forwarded me on Reddit.
Okay,
this was years ago. I don't know what year it was of the Smoking Tent event, but someone was like, "Yeah, so Rocky Patel, Nish was there. They gave me a cigar, and I lit it up, and it cracked like crazy, and the thing was like busting apart, right?" So I walked up to the Rocky Patel booth, and Nish was available, and I told him, I said, "Look at this cigar. Like, you see what it's doing, all this shit? It's broke." And Nish, and this was according to his entry on Reddit. He said, then Nish reached into his jacket, right? Pulls out a cigar and says, "Hey, here's another cigar. I hope you enjoy it. It's not one we're giving out, but this is one that I brought with me. And I hope you enjoy it." This Reddit user just was like, and this piece of shit just didn't even he just wanted to be angry.
Yeah.
And he was met with these
people like that.
Like Nish's professionalism and his manners, and like, let me give you one of my cigars as a, like that whole scenario I just mentioned at the cheese counter, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like that person just wanted to be upset. And I don't know if he was looking for like just to fuel his shit, to just like prove his point, which would have been like if Nish was an asshole and be like, "Hey, sorry about your luck." But he did something nice and gave him a cigar, and the person just wanted to be angry. Sean, thank you for listening and saying, he said that, maybe you shouldn't be in customer service. And he said that, what did he say?
Sean Anderson's
well,
too
now
old to give a fuck.
if I'm the problem, then I should just keep my mouth shut. No, I don't. I think it's again a conversation. It's not just educating. It is truly talking to that person and figuring out what they're upset with, so that you can figure out that how do we make this right? How do we make this better for you or for the party? You know, all the parties at hand. Like, how do we make it better? I think the manners side of it, and here's my my closing remarks is, as I've gone through this conversation with you guys tonight, we've had this show. I love the feedback, and thank you for those that were tuning in earlier, that are still tuning in now. For those that listen after the fact, manners, just like everything else, it takes effort. Because once you involve emotion, it really is tough for a lot of people, most people, to keep their head on right because they're emotional. And I think manners, it's not just with strangers. This is how you interact with people in your everyday life. You know, we talk about this on part 2 a lot of times over the last 4 or 5 years, almost 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, when you are first dating someone, you are on your best behavior. You're trying to really show that person. Then you get comfortable. Well, your manners, the way you treat that person, sometimes they'll fade, right? Because it takes effort. When you're in a job, sometimes it takes a little bit more to interact with those people the way you would when you're trying to get that job. You almost over communicate. You're over polite. You almost get desensitized to a little bit of the interaction on a day-to-day basis. With strangers, when you're working in the customer service side of it, it's like, at first you're like, oh yes, sir, like, how can I make it, ma'am, how can I make you happy, like all this stuff. And you get to a point, I've seen you, that whole stereotype of like the Karens, same shit, right? I know you I've never met you, but I know people like you and all this stuff. And it's like, you just get to that, you get cold, you desensitized and all this stuff. Manners take effort, especially when it's in a tough situation. But I think that this is something that communication is such a big thing, that if you try to work on the problem and try to not necessarily talk over that person, but more importantly, you have this interaction with someone that you're asking questions and making sure that they're being heard, and you hope for them to reciprocate. I think that's where the manners, or just the common decency and the respect for your fellow person, that will really, really benefit everyone. And the reason I brought up that skit that I saw on TikTok or Reels or whatever was because it really does hit home. It's like, some people just want to be happy. Some people just want to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just to Sean Anderson, who made that comment, I'll just keep my mouth shut. Don't keep your mouth shut, but ask some questions. You can say, hey, you don't need to talk to that person that way. You know what I mean? Interject yourself. What's the problem? They don't want to hear from you because sometimes they just want to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
And they might be like that all the time, but there's a good chance that it's not necessarily all the time. It's not necessarily that you need to set them straight so they don't interact with other people that way. There are those incidents as well. But I do believe that leading by example is your best way to do it. Asking someone how their day is, like you were saying, Nate, earlier. Do you really want to know? Do you not want to know? I feel like that's irrelevant.
There are some people that ask that question.
Conversational skills. If you're you mentioned like Chipotle. If you ask that Chipotle worker, you got a line 10 deep, and you're like, "Hey, how's your day?" They sit down your burrito or your bowl, and they're like, "Let me tell you about my day," and you're just like, "Oh shit." I'm going to listen. I do want to know because now I'm interested. You know what I mean? I hope you're doing all right. You don't want anything bad, but you're like, no. Like, I didn't really like want to know how your week's been going, and you hear about like all these problems, but it's like, maybe they do need to vent that out. Maybe that's why they're being rude. You just never know. And I think that's where manners come in. Is like, I truly feel as though, to Jonathan Herring's point, is that you treat others the way you want to be treated. That goes such a long way. If they don't reciprocate, I really hate closing this out on fucking Roadhouse, but
Roadhouse.
Dalton said, be nice.
Until it's time not to be nice.
But that's a long time. Yeah, that's more Sean Anderson.
There you go.
But you be nice the whole time until it's a point that you can't come back from. And I don't think that most 99% of the situations you have in everyday life is just simply just be nice to people. Don't be fake nice. Be real. Ask questions. How can we make this better? What do you want? They ask for too much. You're like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Hey, the cigar cracked. I want a whole box. No, we're not gonna do that.
Fuck off.
Yeah, no, we didn't. No, we can make it right. I can give you a discount, something like that. But it's just having the conversation. Someone's upset. Someone's important to you that's upset. Let's talk about it. Let's not text. Let's talk. Like to your point, Nate. Just you're not gonna fix everything, but you can at least address everything. And I like
well
that.
said.
Thank you.
Well said there. It's a good line.
Jonathan, I'm sorry it was overs. I had to get that point out. Cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday, everyone. We'll see you next week. We got some good stuff coming up. We're looking forward to it. Appreciate it. Share, like, and tell everyone about it.